6:02, call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? There are none, right?
None for me.
And then, are there any public comments outside of what's on the agenda? Doesn't look like there are. So we'll jump into item 3, board, committee, commission reappointments, something we have to do every year. We have an item in our packet, which was a list.
So this is everyone that's needs to be reappointed this year that's up for reappointment. So you'll see the little key color-coded Joy put in. The blue ones are ones that we haven't heard back from. And all the ones in black are ones that, yes, they want to be reappointed.
Okay, so those are all positives, and they need to be done by January 1st,
January
right?
1st. And so what you've done in past years, sometimes you've decided to just reappoint all of them, acknowledge that we haven't heard, there's a few of the folks we haven't heard back from, assuming that they're going to be reappointed, and if we find out something different, then we'll have a vacancy. But
Okay.
You can decide how you...
Yep, and I think I'd be all right with that if everybody else was. And, I think I had a chance, I just looked at the list, made sure there wasn't anybody there for whatever reason, we wouldn't want to reappoint. I don't know of any issues that we've had. We could highlight a couple of boards that,
So there, it looks like all the terms are there when they expire, but if you notice on one, on Trails Committee, it looks like there's an error in the, in
Chip
MacArthur's.
MacArthur, yeah.
Chick.
So that's a little unconfirmed, or it got cut off?
I think it's Chick. But the date.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can pull up what I
To go on the
did.
Trails Committee
It
on
says
the,
Chip MacArthur, it expires 1/0.
See if I can figure out.
Renee, did you say the black?
the black are the ones that have said that, yes, they wish to be reappointed.
So
The
am
ones
I-
that are in the
Am I
bluish.
reading that then,
purple.
that the village steering committee, all three are
Yes, they have chosen to all be reappointed, and remember we had an applicant,
asking? Right, but
Nathan Fry.
my question though is, do they meet and are they still a standing committee that is active?
They are planning to reactivate in January.
Yeah.
So they have not had a quorum, but now they have interest in, they have an applicant that's gonna be interviewed by you in January, and they have someone else that has expressed interest as well. And
That's
so
great.
they're hoping to really re-energize in the new year and become an active committee.
So
once
it's a
again.
7-member committee?
The village steering committee is, I believe, a 7-member committee.
Okay.
And they'll have, so if they have the 4th member, if you choose to appoint that 4th member in January, they would have just enough for a quorum.
Yeah, but that means everybody has to show up.
But they also have someone else, I think,
Yeah.
that's apparently interested, and they're hoping to really do some more marketing of,
I guess I'm
Exciting.
feeling like, we do have a lot of committees,
Yeah.
and whether it does make sense for some of those committees to go down to, I would say, a minimum.
Smaller
A
size.
smaller
Smaller.
size, like 5, because, I'd hate for people to continue to come and there not being a quorum, and then people get discouraged. Whereas if you had 5 members and you have 3 people consistently, a group of 3 show up, I think it's harder to,
you guys could
So,
certainly discuss that
yeah,
and make that
at some
change
point.
as well. when
yeah.
you're doing
Excuse me.
interviews.
1 second. As I look at the Trails Committee spreadsheet that I had created and modified as a PDF, it was, Charles, my apologies if it's supposed to be Chick. I had, but the term would be from January 1, until January 1st of 22,
22.
Like the
Yeah.
rest.
like the rest.
Except
It didn't
she should have offset those, so we may need to adjust it because we want to offset some of those terms so that they aren't all expiring at the
point.
same time. Yep.
Yeah, could you do that in the next time, please? Would be
I
just
think we
right.
need to do that for this time.
This time.
This time.
How many, well, no, I mean, just to put how many people are on, what it's a committee is supposed to be of.
Oh,
So we have it in one place, whether
Yeah,
it's a 7 or a 9 or a 5. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I think then
Absolutely.
at a quick view, we can see who's,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Do we want to adjust those expiration dates?
Yeah, I think we want to
How would we
offset them
choose
so that we
that?
aren't having so many expiring at the same time. So if you guys want to approve them and then per us adjusting the
Yeah.
expiration so that it's a sort of a balance, so we're not having so many members.
Okay, so you would
terms.
probably pick 2 and change those to 2-year terms.
Yeah, so we would look at the balance with the rest of the existing members and and see when the expiration dates are and try to stagger the terms a little more.
So
So
if we,
I'll make a motion to reappoint the people on the CBC renewals list with expiration dates or term dates ending to be adjusted by the town administrators.
And are you saying all names or just one color name?
the ones in black that have.
The ones in black that are
So being
Are you saying just the
reappointed.
ones in black?
So the ones in blue, we haven't heard
Well-
back from them, doesn't mean that they're,
Well, that's the nature of my question
Yeah.
is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
why not just reappoint everybody? And
I did.
Oh, you did?
I didn't
That's-
specify.
You didn't specify.
So
So you're
the
saying
entire
everybody.
list.
The entire list,
The entire list.
all colors.
Okay.
there we go.
Perfect.
Yep.
I would anticipate that we'll have another vacancy on the town forest committee. Did Stuart send a letter in?
He didn't send a letter, I did hear from, on Trails that he wasn't going to be,
Okay.
but I didn't hear.
I think he's still a
Same.
member of the town forest committee
Yeah,
too, but
Yeah,
they moved, so,
oh, okay, I did,
or they're,
okay,
it's happening
got it.
soon.
So we would expect in January again, and
Yeah.
maybe, there might be a couple of slight adjustments
Yeah.
that you'd let us know.
Yep,
And then after the dates are adjusted, assuming they are, then it would be good to have this as the, final sheet. that sort of
yes,
tells
sure,
us.
yeah.
Yeah.
But are we going to do anything with the idea of reducing the size of some of those committees from 7 to 5 so they don't have such a hard time having a quorum?
Well, I think the
think some
village
of that.
steering committee anyway is one that, Andrew is talking about. The others,
I was talking about all of them.
taking a Okay.
Look at everything.
yeah,
So if we put the size of the committees next to each of these, we could have another look at it in January, and then, based on that, we might reach out to the chairs and ask those committees to sort of discuss that, for example, village steering, saying, would it be, at this point, appropriate to reduce the size of the committee to 5 and get their input?
The planning commission's not on here.
Was. Yikes.
That's true.
Oh.
so only the ones on here are ones that you're actually reappointing tonight.
You're right, it didn't get copy and pasted over. My apologies.
Yeah, but there's no terms expiring on the planning commission.
Maybe that's why it
Yeah.
didn't, maybe that's why I didn't put it on. Thank you so
Oh, yeah,
much.
That's what Mike just said.
Did you just say that? Wow.
Still is.
Yeah, they're all 20s and 21s and 22s.
All right, so we have a motion to approve all of these, and allow the town administrator staff to adjust and stagger some dates where appropriate. And then we'll have another look at it in January to consider adjusting sizes
And we
if
should probably
necessary.
mention to confirm the
The others,
availability of the
yes.
people who are
Yeah.
marked in blue.
Yeah.
Are you good with that? All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Second.
Aye? Oh,
I missed it, Mary, sorry.
I think it passed. All right, next item on the agenda is consider approving workers' comp property and liability insurance bid. Our town administrator, Renee and Joy, worked at sending out to bid our annual property liability insurance. And you've got how many bids?
So we ended up getting 2 bids, so 3 different companies were planning to bid, and we only received 2 of them that actually submitted a bid.
And so you had a small working committee of?
We did, so we had select board member, Tom, we had Missy Ross, our town clerk, and the 2 of us as the committee to review the different proposals that came in. We interviewed we had them come in on separate occasions and interviewed them, had a list of questions as we went through the proposals of questions, just trying to make sure that we had a very clear side-by-side, comparing apples to apples of the coverage. And after that process, we went through it, and the recommendation that we're making to the board is we feel that it would be best to stay with passive. Even though the Trident came in overall in combining all the coverages to about $11,000 less than passive. Once you compare the side-by-side comparison, the deductibles are significantly less in passive, and the coverage amount that they have is greater. And just the simple value of the service that we have, they're really targeted to municipalities. And so if it had been a greater difference, we would have felt like maybe it would be worthwhile to make that jump this year, but we really didn't feel like, we don't have anything to complain about as far as service. We've had really good service. And the coverage that we have is in mostly line by line is either equal to or greater than the coverage that was proposed by the other company, and the deductibles are far shorter. So we figure the $11,000 is going to shrink even greater, and actually maybe on the other side, if on one claim, if the difference in deductible and coverages on various areas. And with passive, we also they've made lots of changes in services that they provide. And so now they have a law enforcement loss control consultant. So it was one of the police chiefs areas now works with passive and provides that type of service to our police department. And actually I just talked to Chief Koss today, who met with them, and he really feels like that's going to be a great value. We have one of their loss control consultants that sits in on our safety committee meeting every month, comes to our safety committee meeting and does all the walk around. So, we really feel like we're getting good service. We're moving in the right direction, and we feel like we're on a good path. We want to give it some more time to see where we land. And, we learned a lot from this. We think it was a very valuable exercise. And, if we need to go through this again, I think we should, but it's, I think at this point, the committee, we collectively felt like it's the right thing to stay with them, and I think it's the best value overall.
Well, I'll commend you, Renee, and the committee for taking this on, because we hadn't done that in a while. There really was no need to do it other than your suggestion that let's do this, and just to make sure we're on the right insurance train, so to speak, and I think your comparisons saying the value we're getting is good, the service we're getting is very good. I mean, I know the town and everyone's been working on the workers' comp through the safety committee activities, and we're seeing some progress there. So, we're in a good trend anyway, so.
Yeah, like I said, I think it was a very good exercise, and through that process, we learned a lot more about our insurance and our coverage, and know the questions to ask in the future, and things that we can do. So I even though it seemed like crazy at the time, and I knew it was gonna be a big push, I think it was worthwhile, so,
Good.
And I agree, we should look at it again.
yeah.
I mean, there are
absolutely.
some things in here that could really skew numbers one way or the other, even as soon as next year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it was valuable. I think maybe next year we'd even have more
right,
people,
Yeah, I wonder-
more companies respond.
yeah.
How many towns in Vermont use passive?
I mean, the majority do, but
Yeah.
in the last few years, the commercial market is getting more into working with towns. And so there's been more outreach by commercial carriers now than there have been in the past.
And so now that we've gone through the exercise and you've gone through it, you know, in your discussions with other town administrators or town managers, you know,
Right.
you could always ask them the question and, you know, you'll just be that much farther along.
Yeah.
Right, and I think, you know, just value on, you know, serving on maybe some of the passive boards and insurance boards, we, you know, something speak as a voice for, things that we see that could be changes that might also be good, so I think it really was a good exercise. Timing was a challenge, but hey, you know,
Yeah.
but it was good, so I think we all feel confident in that recommendation.
So this is, you need this by January 1st?
So January 1st is when the
New one
new one
starts.
starts. We told we would, you know, confirm with the insurance companies by no later than December 19th. I did, just out of respect, reach out to each of them and let them know the recommendation that the board was going to make to the select board. Ultimately, it's your decision. But I just wanted to give me, because the other company also, and I did compliment them, they were very, very respectful through this process. They really did their work on getting the information they needed, and so we learned a lot from them as well, and, you know, so it was good, complimentary on both sides.
And I'm hearing from Tom that, hey, we might consider doing this again next year.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I think
yeah.
we were kind of in the last minute push,
Yeah.
and I think other companies didn't have quite the time to get it together. So I think it was definitely valuable. And again, if some of these numbers skew one way or the other, it might be well worth doing.
Yeah.
But
And
for
it
this
is-
year, I
yeah.
think it was the right choice.
And it is a lot of money too, so I guess we could have a motion that's asks that, has you, you know, continue with the insurance coverage as recommended.
I'll make a motion to, should I say, to award the contract for insurance to VLCT Passive for the amount that is, for the calendar year, yeah.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that passed. On to item 5, we've got FY '20 capital budget and department budget presentations. We've got 5 departments tonight, starting with the highway budget. Mike, do you want to come up? What the heck, right?
Get the guest of honor, so that
Yeah. And we, in our packet for each of these 5 departments, we have a budget spreadsheet and then also, in some cases, a memo or some supporting documents. I think for the highway, we just have the spreadsheet, is that right?
spreadsheet, and you have tabs at the bottom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just gonna pull it up here.
Does it always snow on nights you come to the select board?
Yeah. Been home for about 15 minutes.
Oh, that long.
Oops. Do you wanna just walk us through any of the changes or any highlights?
Well,
As
I
soon as
mean,
find it, I'll
Mike, do you want to
open
do
up.
it? You want me?
We can both do it. I mean,
Yeah, go.
there aren't many changes. Well, there's the one, the 30,000, does
Yeah.
that want to be put in the highway or the general fund? Because it's kind of a special thing and not really.
Yeah, so this 30,000 is for potential repair of McGee Hill Road. And we're a little unsure whether, you know, we might be required to do it or not. It's not really been, it's really a settlement of a outstanding issue, legal issue, and, I think the town has offered to make some improvements or adjustments to the drainage on McGee Hill, so that's a quote we had, for the cost of doing it. It seems like we could put it in there as a special line, and, you know, we probably should be prepared to vote it. I know it makes your budget look bigger, it's because it's sort of above and beyond, but I think occasionally we might have a large culvert or things like that that we would identify, so.
I did talk to VLCT, Passive, about this, and they need to get more confirmation, you know, regarding, because this is in mediation or legal, we need to find out. So for now, we should keep it as a placeholder. And before we finalize this budget in end of January, they'll have confirmation if we do indeed keep it in
All
there,
right.
or if as a different plan is gonna be in place.
All right, so maybe leaving it there for
Leaving
now.
it there for now is just what they suggested.
Okay, and so then we can, you know, look at other.
And whether it's here and lives here or lives in the select board professional services, we can confirm that as well, but, what they suggested is just to keep it in the highway, for right now until they got more clarification from the other.
And hopefully,
attorneys.
we might
Yeah.
get some before we finalize the budget.
We will,
Yeah.
they said that they would be able to confirm.
You
get
know
clarification.
also about the legal fees associated with this?
Yeah, so the legal fees, this is another, working with Passive,
Okay.
that they have an attorney that
Yeah.
takes care
Okay.
of those pieces that they contract with for this type of thing.
Okay.
Any extra work, they've split costs. When we had engineering work done, they paid for 50% of that cost, as well as, and then we paid for 50% of those bills too.
Are there any other, and does anybody have any specific questions for Mike?
So the two lines you say should remove this line, those are in capital now?
Yeah, those have just lived, and they're, but they can be removed.
Yeah, years ago, they were in the general highway budget.
So you have the plan for paving. We've put in 250,000 each year. I think this year we have spent a little more based on,
Got a little less.
yeah, a little less.
Yeah.
Okay.
The idea is that if we did get a grant,
We would still keep that amount in there and it would go into
to
the
next year.
reserve.
Yeah.
That we have
Yeah.
to, so we have to use our money, and then the grant is on top of it, so you can do extra beyond.
Like we did, yeah, we did
Yeah.
that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Last grant we got.
Yeah. And so, and actually in the highway budget, conversation we had it's because it's a separately voted item, and highway funds are treated differently than other funds. And so anything left, at the end of the fiscal year is just used to apply towards the next fiscal year in highway funds specifically.
we automatically roll it.
Over. I
We
mean,
need to make sure
we don't, is that something that we vote on at the end of the year to put it into the reserves or?
It's just something that we should be using to offset the next year's budget, of the highway budget.
Okay.
We had, the only other thing I'm waiting for to get a quote on is, the striping. And that's
Yeah.
probably gonna be $2,000 or $3,000 to do that. It just gotten to be a little too much for us to do some of these crosswalks. Silver Street, Charlotte Road, Commerce Street.
The fog lines and all
Well,
that,
that's,
right?
that's,
That
we
you
already
already
do that, we already got
Doing
that.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
And, are you trying to do them once a year? Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
sort of?
Just
This is
those,
just subcontracted out.
right, just those bigger ones are kinda tough for us to do.
Do the people who do the fog lines do those too?
No,
No.
no, so, somebody different. We had some decreases because we increased stuff last year for signs, for supplies, new signs for us, road package signs, so we got those, we can decrease that. The other big thing was salt, that went up $10 a ton this year. And we've been using a lot.
Sort of ahead of schedule now.
Yeah, yeah. November beat us up. With the new building, of course, the codes and everything, we had to have a second phone line for the fire alarm that's dedicated to the firm, so we've got to pay for a second phone
Yeah.
line.
And utilities, you're a little unsure where that's gonna be, so we'll just watch
Right.
it over the winter.
Yep. And the other
And the
increase.
radio?
Radios, it just, I've been doing it, Al used to do some of it, and it's just gotten to the point where I can't do it. Al is out of business, so. So we're gonna have to have somebody do this once a year, or, and then get them tuned up or something. I'm hoping I can have a few of them done this year. But
What do they do?
we talk to each other.
No, I mean, what's the maintenance on them?
Oh, I don't, it could be, I mean, some of the, right.
Late at night.
You're trying to pick up a station in the Midwest, right?
No,
On the
no, no,
radio?
just communication amongst us. Yeah, they just, put meters on them and test them, make sure they're tuned in, they get their proper frequencies and private line numbers in them and stuff. I mean, they get jarred around in the trucks or a computer. I mean, they get glitches.
Are there 5?
No, there's 12. All of our vehicles have them,
Oh,
so. The guy in the mower that's stuck up in the back of nowhere.
right.
Our radio communication is about as reliable as cell service now. Not so much.
It's getting worse.
It's getting worse.
The radios stay with the vehicle now,
Because
they're not portable.
Right. Yep. We have portables when we're out, but those are in the vehicles.
What do I get worse? The frequencies? They haven't changed the frequencies.
I know, we've had problems with them. We've had to have, they've had to do, Al has done stuff to them over the years because there's so many, especially since 9/11, radios have become more and more that,
Reallocations.
yeah, yeah. And then when they did the narrow banding, I know that was 10, 12 years ago, they changed it, and I know we had a bunch of stuff done, and it just, I hear 2 o'clock in the morning, we hear a hospital downloading information someplace. It screws up our radio communication, so,
In Australia.
yeah. Yeah, at least they could play music, right?
So what vehicle supplies do you buy?
Everything.
Right. Well, I'm
But
just saying
it's
because
been
one year you spent
combined.
$48 and then,
$48.
Are we combined?
Because this is all combined. See, if you get the breakdown from Missy, it shows each vehicle.
okay.
But then there's the dollar amount, I think it's $7,000 in supply. She's combined it, so it's $37,000 total.
Well, I was just talking about the $7,000 line. but-
Right, because in the end, it was all combined on Missy's end, and it doesn't show up here.
Okay.
So what we.
Right, I get it.
There might have been only $48, just that there was a random thing that got
Yeah.
$48 charged that account.
Right.
The rest of that money was charged to everything,
Okay.
the rest of the vehicles.
Right.
So we either need to merge those 2 lines into one.
Yeah.
That's
To
our
replicate.
filters, wipers, washer fluid, all that kind of stuff that we're using. And repair and maintenance is repair and maintenance.
Right.
Tires.
And then there's other supplies. Like
General
in the-
supplies.
In the general
Right,
highway.
In the general highway,
yeah,
just,
and-
right, that's
yeah.
shovels, rakes, hammers,
Yeah.
tools.
lined up for next year? Same old projects or anything special?
Well, we have 2 grants that are out there. So we have Levine Hill, ditching and riprapping on Levine Hill, and Hayden Hill at the intersection of North Road. So,
Those are approved grants?
yep. Yep. Yep, part of the general permit stuff.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
And Chris Dubin from, yeah, has been really good on that, getting this. So he's doing all the paperwork for me, everything. I just gotta sign it and give it back to him and we get it. Because last year we had the one for, we got Turkey Lane and I had the Better Roads one from Lincoln Hill. So those were big ones.
How did you identify the Levine Hill and the Hayden Hill ones as the ones to do?
I don't know.
Did Jessica?
Jessica's the one that did both of those.
Yeah, okay. So
she
Liz
approached-
Association
Yeah,
helped.
Yeah.
Get those.
yeah.
Jessica, so that one is, I mean, Jessica, the Malone and McBroom consult, CCRPC consults with them as well.
Yeah.
Yep. And so those were the hydrologically connected sections of, yeah.
The Lewis Creek Association was a little
Yeah,
push
but,
on
you know,
that.
But
we've
they-
done all that Lewis Creek have done all the previous work in showing the hydrological connections and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah, okay. On the Hayden Hill one, we talked a little bit about this, about whether we should try to address the stuff further up on Hayden Hill, which would impact how you would go about doing it.
No.
East?
No,
Hayden
That-
Hill East.
west.
Oh, this is Hayden Hill West?
yes.
Oh, off of
The ins-
Texas.
No,
Hayden Hill West,
west,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
off North Road.
yeah, so
Yeah,
what
yeah.
about addressing?
We
the-
haven't gotten up that far yet.
Okay, all right. But we might
We
want
need-
to.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Addressing what in particular? Just the,
Some
edges
drainage
of the
issues
road,
up there
yeah,
that
yeah.
have been going on for years.
That
Yeah.
need to
Below
work
the
with the
Francis
landowner.
property,
below the Francis property?
or across from the Francis property, some
Yep.
areas there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How far up the intersection are you gonna go? Down to the brook at the bottom?
And up the.
And up the- up a little
first
ways.
little knoll.
Yeah, up towards Hemlock Hill.
To Hemlock Hill.
To, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's the part that got really
Yeah,
wiped
that
out.
washes out.
Yeah,
And actually, we've looked at it, and what the grant consists of is from North Road to the bottom of the hill is putting culverts in the ditch line, 30-inch culverts, and just burying them, because it just washes that road out constantly. Because of the bank there, it's just the lay of the land there. And then putting another culvert across Hayden Hill before the big culvert. So, and then the other side is just regular ditching and riprap.
So this budget has, for salaries, 3%, which primarily is driven by the union contract. On the other budgets that aren't union, you know, select board will need to, I mean, I think I'll ask Renee to give a recommendation based on CPA, and, you know, her recommendation on where we are as a town, to put a general number in there for the rest of the salaries that aren't driven by the union. And Renee had mentioned today that as we get closer to June, we make that final decision. But we need to budget a number in there.
and this includes a fourth person. Yeah.
And a summer part-time person.
Yeah, but in general, I mean, we would hope to have a four-person crew.
We should have a four-person crew. We hope to have a five-person crew.
So explain the, just get into the, can we get into the capital or just the?
Yeah, let's do it.
You, so capital transfer summary right now, it shows the 438,973.84. If you click on the first tab that says FY20 capital transfer,
Yep.
that itemizes what's included in that 438. And then below that are some additional items that when Andrea, Mike, and I met, those were some of the other things that were discussed. The figures for the transfer, those are just, that's a thought, but I tried to give some values of what Mike, screen plant, what he's found for use. I think in the capital plan, we have somewhere between 50 to 100,000 to find one used. And then the case tractor replacement, he was suggesting perhaps,
So these are just suggestions, they're not in that number yet.
they're not in that number
Okay.
yet, so that would need to be added. The 438,973.84 is really just is made up of the vehicle payments that we
Yeah.
already have.
And the
The
paving.
paving, and then the culverts and gravel, which we've been doing the 15 and 30. So,
And the idea of the screen plan is we would maybe be a little more efficient and timely on getting your gravel out of the pit.
And, yeah, is one of the big things, but then we also gotta look at, because of the general permit stuff, with all the rip wrapping, down the road, that's wasting material. What are we gonna do with it when we clean it out? Currently, we're crushing it. But I think the right machine, it can get rescreened and reused. And then we're not gonna be buying stone constantly.
Yeah.
And having to haul it from wherever, New Haven, Moncton, or Bristol, wherever we're getting it. And that would, in the payments on this, we buy a $70,000 machine, we could take $15,000 out of our winter budget that we wouldn't be paying somebody to screen it.
Cause you're doing the work for them anyways, they just bring.
We're
their-
up there, we gotta haul
Yeah,
it and,
right.
stockpile it or whatever, so,
Yeah.
I mean, they're giving us a good deal, it's just getting tougher and tougher to get them, and then, they show up when it's raining and we're up there in the rain doing it. It's the whole idea of having a shed now, they're supposed to be dry, but you
So-
put it in there wet.
So there's 4 items on here, one option would approve them all, but if they were, which ones have the higher priority? We've got the screen plant, the tractor replacement, and 2021 mulcher.
Which would I prefer?
Yeah, I mean, is there priorities here?
But we could put the tractor in for, a little less this year. Ultimately, it'll be 60,000.
This is an attempt to save up for it.
Right,
Right,
right.
yes.
But so if we did, we could go down to 10 this year or 20, 20.
yeah, I mean, I just put the 20
Yeah.
in there
Yeah.
just for something,
Right.
for some
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
if you're thinking of saving it in advance
Yeah.
of items.
Okay.
I
But
mean,
it-
on the upper one, for the following years, all of that is gonna stay about the same
yes,
for the following year.
Right.
Right, and so, I mean, I think,
nothing drops out.
No. The 2014, I have to look in the capital. 14 should, yeah.
Okay.
It's shown in the capital, and when it's supposed, last payment's supposed to be. Let's see. Final payment is FY '21 for the 2014 Mac.
And what of these will we be adding? I mean, but we're still,
So,
Nothing till
yeah.
21.
right, I mean, it's,
so instead of thinking about the capital transfer being 438,
right.
it's more like it's gonna be 500.
Right.
We need
Yes.
to be carrying probably
Right.
$500,000 every year. Because these items, there might be some other smaller items, not just the trucks, that are gonna need to be replaced. So if we're really trying to be budgeting for capital, we need to be putting more in, I
Yeah.
think, and looking at it further out.
So if you look at the narrative items associated with highway, I mean, you'll
Yeah.
see the list of everything that's in there
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah.
And like I said, these 4 items were ones that we had in our conversation of things that Mike would suggest
And,
us to
and
consider.
what I heard Mike saying is the screen plan is something we should move forward for. And then the tractor replacement is something we're gonna need to do, whether we start saving up for it or now or not. Either way, it sounds like it's something we're gonna need to do. The other two, you know, are good things to move forward with, but the mulcher's pretty small
So
in
with the
comparison.
screen plan, if you look at the spreadsheet, you said the winter for the sand, which you've been
That
budgeting
could go
for,
down a little bit.
has been what, 18,000 is what you had in the current year, 20,000. You're recommending going to 18. But that would not be there if you were screening it yourself.
Well, some of it'll be here.
Some
It'll
of
be there
it.
for maintenance, and that's
But you
also
would-
in that $18,000 or $20,000 that's there. We add salt to it, so it's 4 or 5 loads of salt.
Okay.
But
If we
in
got,
that budget of sand,
Mhm.
that includes some salt in there?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think the one thing about thinking about behind this, the screen plan is that these guys do the trucking,
Yes.
but
So
there still is another person there.
Right, but if
Running
we're,
it
if we
and-
can put sand up, you know, in June, July,
Right.
when it's dry out, it could get stockpiled up there.
Right.
And, yeah,
I'm in favor of
Yeah.
doing it, but I think that we should always remember that, like Mike mentioned, that there's the maintenance on it. Once we own it, then we're gonna have to take care of it. And the scheduling of like, all of a sudden, all right, well, we have like a million things to do on that to-do list for the summer. And,
but it gets done, it has to get done anyway.
It has to get done,
Right,
yeah,
right.
So this
yeah.
allows you to do it
Right.
when, versus
A little bit
trying
more
to schedule
convenient
with this
time,
guy.
yeah.
I mean, it does make sense in what you're saying, because
Yeah.
you're gonna be able to recycle some of the sand and
Mm-hmm.
riprap that you end up digging out eventually.
mhm.
Yeah.
It does make sense. Just logistically, I'm wondering how it's gonna, only because things break down.
No, God.
And if it breaks down, that's a big expense. Because I don't see you guys with your limited staff being able to maintain something like that. Well, I mean, if it turns into a week project,
Well,
not that you
no,
can't, it's just the amount of time.
I mean, back when we
purely the amount of
had an
time.
old screen plant, I mean, it was bearings and belts and,
Right.
screens like that. And, I
Right.
mean, this might be, a newer one's gonna be a little bit more to it, but,
It's still a mechanical
It's still-
thing
right.
that is
Right.
reasonable to tinker on.
Right.
I wouldn't imagine you work it really hard, like, one
no, and
that's
that's
used
why
every
I'm thinking,
day.
if we have that, where it's sitting there, where it's all set up, ready to go, and the guy's got 3 or 4 hours or something, if somebody go up there and run it for 3 or 4 hours at a time. We could take 5 months to make our winter sand. Or how many times, the past couple of years, the winters have been so bad, we've run out. We're using gravel to sand in the spring. But,
Okay, so, any other questions on the budget? So,
Phil, can I ask one?
sure,
Paving is just we have a schedule for that. And in the planning world, we often think about, well, how wide are the shoulders gonna be for the non-vehicular users? And so, I think it's a fixed amount, it doesn't factor that in, but Mike, is it just paving Charlotte Road to its existing paved width, or is it somehow going beyond that to any wider?
it's 24 feet. Well, a lot more money, we can widen them out.
I mean, is that, possible, so we've talked about Charlotte Road, just the initial part of it to get to the other one there. So are there any grant opportunities to widen any roads, I wouldn't imagine we'd widen the whole thing and then just have it go to back down to in Charlotte. But there might be sections you might widen, particularly as we talk about Richmond Road.
Right.
So, do you ever
Well, I
see
think
any grant opportunities like that? to-
Well, part of the highway grant, or class 2 grants, you could do that, but you're gonna shorten up the section of road you're gonna pave too and maintain.
And part of it is needing to know if we have enough room to, for the ditches. You know, our right-of-ways are not necessarily big enough to accommodate the wider shoulder, the wider paved shoulder, then a gravel shoulder, and then the ditch. And, you know, so, I mean, we are talking about the complete streets goal here. And we've made the decision to go to 9-foot travel lanes. So we are having them be slightly wider, but,
Yeah, my concern is only that if we keep doing what we've always done, because that's what our budget allows for and that's what we're used to doing, we'll never get to a different place. So if you're happy with 9-foot travel lanes on the existing width of roads, then full steam ahead. But if there's thought that over time, some of these roads wanna be a little bit wider, we gotta budget for it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we would need to do is identify those sections that we
Yeah.
feel would be appropriate.
There's been some talk in the past about Charlotte Road being possibly one of those sections, because of the, connection for CVU students coming in and out of town. Although they come in and out on other roads as well. And I guess just recreational biking, because it leads from the village to a pretty popular area to bike in. Those roads in that section of town are scenic and stuff, a little more accessible than the roads going up Texas Hill for a bicyclist. But I don't think we've done any assessment of
Yeah,
that.
right.
I know there was talk about a UPWP project a couple of years back about maybe looking at that, but we chose not to go with that one. I'm not trying to lob a hand grenade in,
No,
I'm
no,
just trying to
that's
bring
a
it
good
up
point.
so that when you
Yeah.
think about it, maybe in this paving cycle, nothing different happens,
Right.
but, you know, when we get back to it in 10 years, we will have done something to know whether we wanna spend more money on it.
I mean, I think the board has talked about, trying to, this year, sort of focus on Richmond Road and, how do we move that ball forward a little bit in whatever format is possible. And we do have the fog lines, it's a change we made about 4 years ago or so, and I know we get a lot of positive feedback on that, including from the chief, that feels it's a good safety measure all around. So,
but we do have to do it more often because they get worn out.
yeah.
So that's, didn't we
The
talk?
amount that we have in there for that, how much does that allow you to do? It's about,
3.5 miles
yeah, no, yeah.
of
third.
total road, so
Yeah.
6 miles, 7 miles. But
We talked about wanting to increase that because they,
there's some that we have to, Silver Street, and gets done every year almost.
yeah.
Does it feel like you're kind of keeping up? Obviously, they're gonna fade, we're not gonna, the minute they start to fade just a little bit, we're not gonna repaint. them.
Right, that's right, we're just once
No,
a
they're
year.
not. Yeah,
But, some roads are getting skipped because you can still see a little bit of it, so
Yeah.
we're good. We got another one that we just paved or whatever, and we're gonna do it.
yeah.
We didn't get to Shelburne Falls Road this year, but
Yeah.
first thing this spring, they'll be in to do it.
Is that the time of year we do the painting, is spring,
Fall.
fall?
So when it's all covered up with snow.
Yeah, wouldn't it be, could we
Right,
get a different
right.
schedule?
So this might, probably
Yeah.
gonna work out good that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not gonna be done till spring now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems
Be
like
there
more
throughout the
people will
summer.
use it throughout the summer and less in the winter, less walking and certainly
Well,
a
and
lot
then
less
they get
biking.
plowed off.
They get plowed
Yeah,
off.
right. So that might be a good idea.
Because of us.
You can see where cars,
Yeah.
They cut the
tend to-
corners,
They cut
yeah.
the corners, yeah.
Yeah.
They tend to more.
Well, with new autonomous vehicles, you can have narrower lanes.
Is there any more discussion? So I think we have, the typical budget, there's no real surprises in there. That 30,000, we'll have to see where that rides. And then when we look at the capital transfers, we might have a little wiggle room there if we have to. I think it does make sense to, try to save up for what we know are capital expenses coming forward. But we'll see how the whole budget sugars out. Does that sound good? Anything else, Mike, for us?
Also see the reserve, there's a reserves tab to show what's held in reserves as of 6/30/18, and then what's projected based on what we end this current fiscal year. Plan to transfer, and so what the balance would likely be on 6/30/19. Again, this is just all information to be sort of factoring in as we think about what things you might want to add to the capital transfer, and what money we already have existing to use.
So, Mike, is the unfortunate situation we're in with the employees, lack of an employee for the most part, is that going to change the schedule at all with replacement of the trucks?
It could push that 2010 out another year or two. Yeah. I mean, we still use it, you know.
Right, but you're not going to,
We're
you're not
we're
all
not
four on
using
the
it
road
every
as
single
much.
day, right. You know, when we had a truck, my truck was down last week and I had
Right.
to take it out, so. It's almost like a backup truck right now, and,
Right.
you know, currently we're gonna fill it up tomorrow to thaw out some coal patch, so we can go coal patching.
Yep.
We-
But they're less use, you know, it might be an opportunity to.
But, you know, it's a tool, it's a truck. You should know that from a tractor.
Oh,
You can-
yeah.
You know, you can use it, and then not use it for 6 months, and then when you go to use it, it starts breaking down. And you start putting money into it,
Right.
too, so.
Well, just exercise it.
Well, we do. you know.
Exercise.
Well, and our hope is, while we don't expect, we're not gonna continue to buy trucks, that with the new facility, you know, you'll be able to stay on top of things a little bit better and hopefully catch things sooner and hopefully it, you know, pays off a little bit. And we squeeze an extra year out of a truck or two.
Well, and then when we get to the 5,
We'll have when we get to 5 employees, we'll have a mechanic.
Should advertise it, we have a warm floor, it's dry.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All good?
Mike. Yeah.
Thanks.
Next up, planning and zoning technology and the UPWP projects. That would be you, Alex.
Right.
Just pull it up. And we have a memo on this, I think, put together. And here, you, I guess, on your own decided that you'll change the salary 2.5%? Yeah, 2.5.
That's just what Alex put
Yeah,
in there,
right,
it's not
right.
a.
No, so,
Usually I put a number in and then the town administrator modifies it to
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
makes
So
sense.
I think
I
it's-
figured it should have a number rather than zero.
yeah, no, that's fine, yeah. Just noting that that's a decision we'll need to make as a select board, what we decide based on
Yep,
advice from
and
Renee.
as is the case with a lot of our municipal budget, but especially these sort of office job departments, most of the budget is tied up in salary. There aren't big highway trucks and police cruisers to budget for. So yeah, whatever you decide to do as far as the budgeting for the increases in that line item makes a big difference for the budget itself. So yeah, not a lot of changes this year in the planning and zoning budget. We already noted the biggest one, which is salary and wages and the related FICA benefits, so you'll have to figure that out, how much you want to budget for. There's a bump in the professional development line item. I mentioned last year that I'm trying to slowly bring this up so we have a more professional level of continuing education in the department now that we have some stability in our workforce and people have been there and are vested and
Right.
can use that education. along with our board members who, it's very difficult to get them to go out to trainings because most of them have jobs during the day and can't do that. So we want to be able to bring those trainings to their meetings, and oftentimes we can do that for low cost, but sometimes it's nice to spend money to bring an expert in or have a panel discussion or what have you.
Yep.
So that item is up by $400. The RPC budget line item is down just a tiny bit. They have sort of an arcane method of figuring that out with number of population and such. And special projects is up, but there's more to be said about that. So,
You have that in your memo. So
yeah,
there's-
that's where you probably want to focus. I mean, I'm happy to talk about anything you want to talk about, but I think that's where you might want to focus more discussion tonight, because every year we apply for a state municipal planning grant. It's one of the few state funding sources that are available for municipal planning. And so there's money in this line item every year for local match toward that. And they've been rejiggering their required local match over the last couple of years, and they're at a 10% requirement and a maximum maximum award of $20,000. So $2,000 will leverage the maximum municipal planning grant. Beyond that, however, is the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission's Unified Work Program, and that's something that is also annual, that they encourage all of the member municipalities and others to suggest projects that they could work on, and they have a lot of transportation dollars to give out for planning related projects. None of this money is available for actual implementation, but it's transportation planning money. And unlike the state municipal planning grant program, which doesn't have enough money to give out to everybody who's looking, the RPC does, or has almost enough money to fund most of the projects that at least came in last year, is my understanding. So it's a good source. We should be tapping it. It does require a local match, and so this budget includes money for that. However, if you read the memo, I'm trying to point out it doesn't contain enough money to do all three of the UPWP projects that I'm suggesting. So two conversations. One, how much money do you want to spend in order to leverage additional grant dollars for transportation planning in particular? And assuming that we are going to apply for one or more UPWP projects, the application which are due in January, which ones are you interested in? And knowing that will probably drive how much money we need to budget for in this line item.
And these are the three you're recommending?
Yes, and there could be others. So it's not like this is an exhaustive list, but I figured, well, this is an appropriate time. It generally comes out of my budget, so I gave it some thought. Got a suggestion from Mr. Bissonette in the back of the room there. So yeah, these are the three I'm recommending. There's one very high price one, and that's the one that this budget doesn't have funds to cover. So the special projects line item is a $6,700. I'm even though I don't have all my cost estimates from folks, I'm pretty confident that will cover the other two UPWP projects. A freshening up of a sidewalk feasibility study that we did in 2006 and is a little dated now, as well as the project that Mike suggested in terms of redesign of the Richmond Road, North Road intersection. But I'm sure the 6,700 will cover those two. But the scoping study for the Route 116 Riggs Road intersection, that one is likely to be a $60,000 project, which means our local match would be $12,000. So we'd have to substantially increase the special projects line item to be able to pay for that, unless we can get the developers who are interested in that intersection to also contribute. I wanted to talk to you first before I talk to them. So I don't have any pledges or anything to really tell you on that front, except that they're all very interested.
And the timing on that, I mean, we wouldn't want to wait too long, but it seems like that's something over the next year we could work toward as these developers get a little farther along.
Yeah, the upshot is from traffic technical standpoint, the Haystack Crossing project is preparing to move forward with their first phase, pending the drilling.
Phase 1A.
They want to do phase 1. You granted them allocation for phase 1A. They
Yeah.
want to drill the well and demonstrate they have capacity for the full phase 1. Still not the whole project, but the first phase. And they're prepared to move forward with a minor improvement to that intersection, the 116 Riggs Road intersection, creating a right in, right out only. And they're talking to V-Trans actively about that. With the understanding that for the rest of their project and the other projects around them, something more needs to happen at that intersection, roundabout, another traffic light, something like that. So they're interested in moving that conversation forward about the final sort of future improvement, the larger one, but they are moving forward on this right in, right out concept right away. Jan Blumstrom's property that has an approved lot that you've also granted allocation for, could come in at any time they find a potential tenant, and it's unclear whether the traffic generated from that would require something more to happen at that intersection. It might, and so which project will trip the need to really do something big there? It's not entirely clear.
Do we have what will trip it? Is there a certain amount of traffic?
I don't know. I know that V-Trans, at least the one V-Trans staff that I talked to, was pretty comfortable with BlackRock's proposal for their project as an interim step that would probably work.
And when you say right in, right out, that means you can pull in there if you're taking a right.
Correct,
And you can
leave
come out
if you're taking a right. So
but you can't take a left, you can't go across
You can't
traffic.
So you can enter from Route 116. You can enter southbound,
Yeah,
and you can leave southbound. But you can't do any other movement. So you'd have to come out to in BlackRock's proposal, you'd have to come out to Shelburne Falls Road
Yeah.
for the full movement. But your question is a good one. What will trip the need for a more comprehensive improvement? I don't know. I think this scoping study might help us flesh that out.
On that intersection, what role does that BlackRock is talking to V-Trans on? What role does the town play in that?
So we are there at.
Meaning you?
Yeah, I made sure to tell V-Trans that we were interested and wanted to have input into that, and BlackRock hasn't submitted their formal 1111 application yet. They've just had informal conversation with the V-Trans staff. So I made sure V-Trans knew what the other players were planning to do, Jan's property and the Bouger property. And also what our official map shows is that being a future improvement and having pedestrian access along the west side and so on and so forth. So I am happy to...
But it's their traffic engineer that's driving it.
Well, they'll make the application, so
Yes.
their
Yes.
engineer's
Yes.
gonna
Yes.
prepare the traffic study, and then apparently Mitch and I met with them to talk about
Yeah.
a draft of their traffic study, and it needed some more work, so we haven't seen the real deal yet. But I'm happy to keep you guys apprised, so that if you want to have some input into V-Trans's discussion or decision on that we can. V-Trans seems, at least the staff that I spoke to, seem very willing to hear the town's perspective on those possible improvements.
Yeah, well, I would hope that Mike might be, also understanding what he'll end up having to plow it. If we take that over, that road, it will be, the highway department might have some thoughts about that as well.
I think it's really important to stay on top of this.
Yeah.
and it's a tough
These intersections get out of hand really quickly.
and it's on that hill.
Yeah.
So that's a really,
So
Well, it's down-
one of the recommendations that I forwarded to Renee that you probably haven't seen yet is their traffic engineer is saying that if the speed limit were reduced from 40 to 35, the sight distance issues with the hill would technically be solved. There'd be enough stopping distance for people to be safe there. With that said, we all know it's an issue when cars back up, and that's why V-Trans installed that warning light that I never see working, but you've seen it once or twice? Yeah. So there are definitely issues there.
in any case, I agree with Aaron and Renee and Joy and I already talked about this, so it makes sense that we'd agree that yeah, I think it's important that we do get on top of it and that we have our sort of scoping study drive the process for the larger improvement, rather than have, let's say, BlackRock come in with something that everyone says, oh, maybe fine for now, and then Jan gets a tenant who everyone's gaga over and everyone wants to be in town, but suddenly something needs to happen quick, and we don't have as much say over what happens there. I know, Andrea, you were somewhat miffed about what happened at the Commerce Street intersection when the National Bank of Middlebury went in, and their process drove the creation of that traffic light, and the town didn't really have much to say about it. So I'd like to avoid that. I think the best way is to get the scoping study going right away and try to work with these developers who are, I think, willing to, definitely willing to participate. Don't know if they're willing to donate money.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we should have that discussion. That would be good. Mike, did you, sorry?
Well, no, thanks. I just was wondering about, did the study that we did of the 116 possibly being taken over by the town with all the that intersection and other, is that been part of this process, the information gained from that? Alex, do you know?
Yeah, that was a 2014 scoping study, and that
Yeah.
consultant recommended a roundabout at the
Right.
Briggs Road intersection, and also but provided information about what the cost would be if the town did take over that section of 116.
Right.
And I think the upshot was there'd be a slight additional cost based on our current spending, but it's in the order of, I don't know, $10,000 or something.
I mean, initially it was pretty close. I mean, the only thing was we would end up taking over the lights, the signaling, and
Yep.
that would have been the big expense if one of those went down but other than that, it was, it
I really
wasn't a
wasn't
huge
worried about the
expense.
cost, I was asking about the information of the
Yeah.
traffic patterns.
Right.
I was asking.
If we, I had a question on the scoping study. So if we go forward with this scoping study, how much is the state brought in? Because, you come up with these great roundabout and, when you say roundabout to the state, they might go, forget it, we're not doing that.
No, the state would be very, very involved. The consultants are good at getting their feedback. And my understanding is that the V-Trans is required to study multiple options before they do intersection improvements, and one of them has to be a roundabout per.
Right, I'm just sort of saying, how much would they take the scoping study? I mean, could the scoping study, how involved are they? So
Oh,
that
they're
when
very
it's
involved.
done, they're
They're
like,
vested
yeah,
in it.
this
They're
is,
vested in it, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, they will definitely be very involved. Yeah, and
It's
I.
their $60,000.
Yes, that's true. Wow. Yeah, doesn't mean, yeah. So in the effort just to keep moving forward.
I just had a couple more questions, Phil.
Go ahead, yeah.
I just wanted some updates from Alex, if you could, on last year's scoping study on 116 Charlotte Road intersection. And have you heard anything about the bus survey that was gonna be done? I
Right, so-
personally haven't done that yet.
So in this fiscal year, we received 2 UPWP.
Projects, funding, as Mike mentioned. One was to work with Richard Watts and UVM on survey of bus riders and to do some incentives and such to try to glean, try to increase bus ridership and that sort of thing. And that's ongoing. The survey happened, and there's data coming back from it. And I don't believe that project has wrapped up yet, but I think it will in the first part of next year, Mike. So that one's underway and work has been done. The 116 Charlotte Road intersection conceptual plan has not gotten underway yet. Jason Shrest at the RPC is managing that and I shouldn't say it hasn't gotten underway. He's been talking with V-Trans about it first before they bring on a consultant, which is what the money's really there to pay for. So the consultant's not on board yet, but he's done the initial legwork with V-Trans, and I think they're about ready to hire a consultant to get that project moving forward. I was hoping that we'd have that project complete by the end of this year, but that's not gonna happen. So we're probably gonna be in February or March at this point, I would imagine.
Okay.
So we can't put any money in the budget to actually do something.
Sure you can.
Well,
You just don't know how much.
That's what I was hoping
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
say that it was gonna take, that's what I was actually hoping you were gonna say, Alex, but you let me down, that's okay. Not you, it's the state.
Right, but your budget is often based on ballpark estimates and such, and sometimes even placeholders. If you felt like the town's interest was served in getting that intersection fixed sooner rather than later, I would encourage you to put some money in the budget. It's been,
But do we have a ballpark number?
no. So,
'Cause, I mean,
Can you get it within a month or two?
maybe,
I mean, it's.
maybe before you finalize the budget.
Less than a month.
But we know regardless of what the conceptual design is, we know what the basic moving parts are. We know that
Right.
the sidewalk needs to be brought
Yeah.
forward towards the road. We know that the crosswalk signal that goes with the sidewalk has to be moved and rewired in the new location. And we know that the signal timing needs to be adjusted, but I don't think there's much cost in that. That's just flipping levers, and V-Trans will do that once the physical revisions to the intersection are made. But there was a problematic tree there previously, that's gone, that's been removed. It's really just whether a brownfield issue comes up that would cause problems. So, I mean, if I were in your shoes and I wanted to see this done, I'd ask me to try to get you a number before Renee says it's too late. But if, I would just put 20,000 in and say that's gonna be what we're gonna place, as a placeholder to try to get it done if we don't spend that.
So we might just add that in there as a, redlined in there, so as we're looking at the overall numbers, we have something to take out. Not really, but, that's not a bad idea.
So with this, all the discussion about the 116 corridor, basically Riggs Road and out here, whatever came of the 116 scoping, was it scoping
that's
study
what
or
he
the
was saying
corridor
is
plan?
That's what
It
Mike was
was-
asking
it was
about.
gonna be-
Right, back in 2014, we did that. It had all sorts of things we could be
Right.
working on, yep.
What my question is, are we really addressing the main
Oh,
problem?
I think I know what you're saying. Yeah, so what that study said is that the two projects that the consultant assumed were just gonna get done, but haven't yet, if that those two projects were the improvement to 116 CVU Road, Shelburne Falls Road intersection that V-Trans is working on, but now looks
This
like
year,
a
maybe?
2020 is the more likely number. They're gonna replace culverts next year, and that's gonna take them the whole summer, and then they're gonna do the intersection improvement 2020. Anyways, if that intersection and the one we just discussed here at Charlotte Road were fixed, that would improve wait times during peak hour by 20%. So those two projects need to get done. Those are according to the consultant, that's the best bang for your buck is those two projects. All the other ones are gonna be improving pedestrian safety and accessibility, and potentially adding some network capacity, but not necessarily reducing that peak hour traffic jam quite the way that those two improvements would.
'Cause I see, have you been through Brandon lately?
I haven't, no.
Oh,
Oh, God.
I mean, it's a massive project, and I'm sure it is massive dollars, but I'm convinced that their traffic flow will be better, safety will be better. So I'm just wondering if we're piddling away at it when we should really be approaching V-Trans and say, we have a major traffic problem that's not going to get any better anytime soon. Can we work with you and try to figure out a plan? Because the Silver Street 116 intersection is really bad. I mean, people see it most of the time at night when they're coming home, but in the morning, down Silver Street, they're backed up a mile. And
Right.
it seems like the state should be helping us solve this problem.
Well, they did realign it a little bit, but they.
That's just the
Yeah.
intersection, though.
Right,
It doesn't
they
really
did-
get traffic flowing through our
and
village.
We said there was, other options, but that's what got chosen, I think, because of what was easily done, let's say.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Tom, Andrea probably has a better handle on this than I do. I think that the way that those kind of projects happen in Chittenden County is they get on the Transportation Improvement Plan, the TIP, and a lot of that money is spoken for, even though every year they talk about it. So I think that our chances of getting specific projects in that tip and then getting money for them, that's there. But to come to them and say, we want 3 very high cost projects to all get done at the same time as a part of a comprehensive fix in Hinesburg, I'm not sure I'm not sure we'd get much traction on that. But Andrea, what do you think? Could we make the suggestion?
Charlotte Road, I mean, the Seaview Road it's on the tip.
Sure.
It's been on the tip for, 15 years.
Right.
And, I don't know that it's, they probably got some money from Irene to do some of the stuff in Brandon too, I think.
Well,
Because-
that's possible,
right,
but I
so-
think if we don't address it
Right.
comprehensively, we're never going to get anywhere.
Well, I
I
think they're
we're gonna
waiting
get
for
worse,
us
and we're going to
to,
hear people complain more, and it is frustrating to see
Yeah.
cars backed up that far.
I think that I think the answer would likely be you've done a scoping study, you know where the weak spots are. Fix those first, and then if something more comprehensive than that needs to happen, let's do it. But first, let's fix what we already know is broke. And unfortunately, that means another year and a half or 2 of waiting for the CVU Road 116 intersection. But if you're willing to put money in a placeholder for this intersection, maybe that can happen this year.
I think that makes sense, so I think we should just add it in there so we can certainly keep it under consideration. I think what we're talking about now are these 3 projects. You're saying the first 2 projects, you've put money in. That third one is a much bigger one, which
Yeah.
I think we could consider. It also sounds like the developers, we may be able to bring them in because without this scoping study, they're gonna have to do the work themselves. And
Right.
It's
this,
an
and this
opportunity
gets
to
everybody to
coordinate it.
cooperate,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that makes
and
sense.
coordinate. So maybe we could try to push that this year coming up.
Well, I'm
Just a
happy to
thought.
reach out to them. My thought is that there are, how many parties are there? V-Trans doesn't count because they're not gonna give us any money to do this, or I guess it is, the money we're applying for is theirs, but
Yeah.
not really. Anyways, it's the town,
Yeah.
it's BlackRock Construction, it's Jan Blumstrom, and it's the Bougers. All of those folks have sort of interest and pocketbooks, with the exception of the Bougers. They don't have an active project there, and they have other balls in the air at this point with regard to the Lampman store and all that. So I'm happy to go to all 3 of them and say, how about we share it 25%? But I can imagine the Bougers may be saying, this isn't really our game at this point. So I don't know
It's
if.
gonna increase the value of their lot. So, Mike?
I just wanted to add that what prompted me with the Richmond Road, North Road intersection, it's not just a nice changing it to
Yeah.
there was been a couple accidents up there and near misses.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to
It
put
is-
that in there.
Yeah, and so it's on here, and maybe we should, I'm thinking of time, but just quickly, the 2 that are on there, there's 3 on there, we just talked about an option for the 3rd one. But the other 2, any particular thoughts? I like the Richmond North Road idea.
To be honest, when Mike suggested it, everybody I've talked to has said that should be done. And so my first response to Mike was, we don't need to study that. We just need to do it. And it's all town road, let's just do it. It's easy. There's a 4-way intersection waiting to happen. Just barricade off the curve in Richmond Road and you're done. Make a 4-way stop. But then I thought about it, I'm like, no, there's a real opportunity there, with all that extra space that would be freed up, and maybe there's a way to do the pocket park thing that a lot of other people have talked about, Don Francis most recently, about why we're not.
Parking, I mean, people do need to park here though sometimes.
Limited amount, yeah.
Yeah.
I never see too many cars there, but we definitely heard at the planning commission meeting that folks who live up the hill sometimes have to leave cars down there in the wintertime. Or their guests do.
I think, to me, it sounds like a great idea. A lot of people live up in that area of town, and you know, a small area for, you know, a little pocket park, and, it'll slow the traffic down on Richmond Road a little bit.
So, branching out from that area of town, what opportunities are there this year to explore we'll call it a trail up Richmond Road? Because we've taken some heat
Oh,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I'd hate to leave that one hanging for, you know, to make room for a new project.
I'm sorry, you'll have to
I
educate me.
think
Richmond Road.
Oh, the sidewalk, sorry,
Well, so we're
sorry.
gonna call it a trail for now, because we kind of agree that a sidewalk is probably not financially responsible, but a trail might be able to happen.
Yeah, well, I'd have to look at the scoping study for that, but I'm not sure that I think that the pathway, sidewalk or trail was close enough to the road that if you didn't improve it, it would be tough to use as a trail. But in any case, yeah, how do you move forward on that one?
Well, I just don't know if there's any opportunities in planning or.
I think that this Richmond Road, North Road intersection is the terminus of that project, so why not start there and plan for something positive, and then say, hey, we're thinking about the larger connection, but we're gonna create this node at the end of it, and then we'll move on from there. This is the first I've heard about doing it as something other than what the scoping study called it out for, but you're right, the scoping study was like a $2.4 million project,
Right.
so,
And we talked about maybe putting together a committee
Yeah, I
this
think-
year,
I
of a
think
few
that-
folks.
I think that's really the way to
Yeah.
go before we start, I mean, I think it's getting really the people along that road
Yeah.
to talk to each other and talk with us. And Ray, Nails,
Right.
you know, was eager to do that, so, before we, you know, get into more, I think seeing what kind of landowner cooperation we can get is the first thing to do, before it gets to the last, and then that things get held up for years based on that.
All right, so I want to keep us on
Yeah.
track here. So in the budget, I'm gonna pull it back up here, planning. On that line, special projects, you've got 6,700, and that is enough to cover the first two, roughly.
Yep.
But we know we have the three, and we can consider that as we, you know, continue the budget discussions.
yeah, what, your fellow select board member there encouraged was to, keep that line item at the most it could be while still keeping to your guidance about a 2.8% maximum on the expenditure side, so that's what that is.
Okay.
If you wanna do the third UPWP project, you'll need to add more to that line item. I can go out and try to get commitment from developers to make that as small as possible, but it will still be something
Yeah,
more.
A little bit more. And
Yeah.
the other item that we'll consider is putting some capital aside for the Lampman's intersection, which is probably a good idea.
You could do
if
that in somebody
if you had a
else's
vote-
budget, cause
Yeah.
that's not a planning project.
No,
That-
that's
that-
right. No. But that's something we should consider, and if we were to take a town vote and, you know, if, whether that intersection should be improved, I think people would say yes. We've talked about it for a number of years, and now we're gonna have the study that tells us how to go forward with it. So, once we have that, then we'd be much closer to making it happen.
So because of the cost, 2-point-something million for the Richmond sidewalk, that's not something we would capital plan for, correct? That's more of a bond or grant kind of funding?
Grant.
Is that correct?
Or bond.
Or bond,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's not in the realm of capital planning.
Well, it could be.
You could put money on it, but.
Eons.
It would take a while.
Right,
But
but,
that is what capital planning is about.
and
for
kind of my
sure.
point here is, to your point, you know, people want us to do something about it, and that's at least doing something about it, or at least working towards it.
Certainly, if
with
you
the
were to put
intent.
a little money there, I mean, to move forward a little bit, will take a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Even if it's just some more additional plans and, conceptual changes to reduce the cost, or a section by section approach.
But, you know, maybe that money is, that UPWP project for the terminus. You know, maybe that's
Yeah,
how it's
yeah,
it's
I think
capital
that's not a
planned.
bad start. Yep.
And I think I would really like to do something like that, that it specifically calls out that plan, that Richmond Road sidewalk, and, you know, maybe that's it. Maybe that's that intersection is the thing,
Well,
but
I'd rather work on talking to the people who live there, because that's how we're really gonna get the sidewalk in. I mean, I think there's also, it's the safety issue of the Richmond North Road that Mike's pointed out up there, which I, you know, Mike, I mean, so I think I think all of those work nicely together.
Yeah.
But I think really getting the people who live on Richmond Road on board with it is the major thing that we can do that, you know, doesn't really require a lot of money. It does require some people to organize it. Yeah.
So, so I guess my point here is, if we're gonna put dollars on it, that's what I would like to do, is put something, and it sounds like we could with a UPWP project, right?
Yeah, we would be in
Yeah.
a sense,
In a
yeah.
sense, yeah.
And, you know, we would take that scoping study and along with this, the sidewalk one, and then, you know, make sure they have that in front of them as they look at this design and make sure they match up to some extent. They're not fighting each other. Right? That would be planning. Just.
Absolutely.
And with that, is there any more comments or questions? So you'll add those, that line, or two of them, I guess, huh?
So that,
As
well,
optional things we would consider.
but in this budget for the 20,000 for the Route 116 Charlotte
Wherever
Road.
we think it, yeah,
Is- yeah.
wherever
Yeah.
the best place is.
And
Doesn't
then
have to be
putting
this
right-
one.
Yeah.
Highway, we can put everything in highway.
Yeah, right.
Well, it is, I mean.
It is a
Yeah,
it is a
yeah.
highway.
Why not?
I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately,
Or
taking over
buildings and
116
facilities,
is
one or the
That's
is
right.
a highway department budget.
All right, is that good?
Yes.
Are you all right, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Still on to
And
technology.
thanks for the budget. Yeah, oh, technology.
New
So
tab.
that's it, yeah. So we did put a little aside, let me see.
Is there
if I
a
pull
tab
that.
for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Right next to, right to the right of.
P and Z.
Oh, that's what it is, that's why.
So it's titled technology, it's really just town hall technology, police department and the highway department and the fire department all sort of manage their own
Yeah,
technology outside of this line item.
Even waterworks, you know, water.
Right, yeah, water and sewer as well.
Literally just this building.
So, and I can't give you a lot of good information about the non-computery things in here, like copier supplies and NEMRIC contract are not really my domain, but I can answer questions about the computer-related items. Maybe the most significant one is that computer hardware costs are going down quite a lot, and that's just a function of the server replacement that we do every 5 years, and we're doing it this year. So there's a lot of money in this year's budget to replace the server, and next year we won't have to do that. It'll just be, you know, the regular 2 computers a year that we replace. So that's why that's going down by so much. And Aaron and Renee and Joy and I talked about the capital transfer, and that reflects
for the website.
for the website and the server. So this year we're replacing the server. Next fiscal year we'll just start saving again for the next replacement in 5 years. So we just put $2,000 a year aside for that 5-year replacement cycle, and the $4,500 on top of that in capital transfer is for the website upgrade. You apparently put some money aside in this fiscal year for that, so this would complement that. And
And will that be enough to move it forward?
You have
I-
a tab on the technology reserve fund. that
It
shows.
should be, I have to refresh, you know, because it's a year old now, those numbers with the people that I was talking to, you know, different folks. But it should be good to go, and the idea is after July 1st, that
Okay.
it'll move forward.
Yeah, good.
What about putting in something for the digital projector?
That's certainly something to consider. Have we gotten prices at all for
No,
digital projector.
are you ready to replace this thing? Because I'm just waiting for it to die so
Right.
I can replace it.
Right.
Because it's not as bright as it ought to be, and
Especially upstairs.
yeah. Well, why budget for it? I mean,
Buy
that's
it.
a $500 expense. I
I didn't say
mean,
it was a capital. I just
No, it's
said
not a capital, yeah,
We
right.
should put something in the money budget to buy one.
well, if you really want one, why don't we just replace it in this fiscal year out of whatever funds we can scrape together? I mean, it just seems like it's a
Then we have
a
an extra
necessary.
one.
If my computer died, we wouldn't wait till next year to replace it. If this thing is not adequate and we have the budget to find the money, I can buy another one. I just been I didn't want to do it because I didn't. It still works, but if you folks think it doesn't work and it's not working well for your meetings,
I mean, I think that's something you guys can.
I
Yeah,
don't think that,
Decide,
we
yeah.
need to figure that out.
right,
Yeah.
I think it's,
and
We
it
would
does
just
make
benefit
sense
from
to
it.
have a spare.
I think there's a lot of improvement now that VCAM can, do a direct feed right into the server, so we're not having the same issues, and people from the audience, the viewing audience can see it really clearly now, apparently.
Would it be worth it to mount it on the ceiling?
I mean, that's the feedback that we've received, just the direct feed itself is making it very clear. I'm all set, thank you.
we talked about that, Marilee, when Rocky was still here several years ago. The thought being that we didn't anticipate VCAM's cameras moving out of the way of things, which has freed up space. But we thought that if it was mounted to the ceiling, that would free up even more space. You wouldn't have this thing in the middle, and so that's certainly possible. We just have to look into how that would happen physically.
It might not be as easy to move it upstairs if the meeting was.
It might be very hard to move it upstairs if it were permanently mounted, yes.
Okay, anything else?
There is the idea too that
Yeah, I can pass that around.
Yeah, now we're
Yeah,
talking
there's cookies in
modern.
the office. Those are what you really want.
In a lot of schools it is, yes.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Any more questions for Alex? Anything else for us, Alex?
No, just on the revenue side of planning and zoning, we don't really
Yeah.
have control over it, but
Yeah.
I've been very conservative every year, budgeting a low amount. It was quite a lot that came in, more than expected in the last fiscal year. So I'm recommending boosting that by a substantial amount. So if that makes you feel any better, if we end up adding a little bit to the special projects line item per that third UPWP project, what shows as a 2.8% expenditure increase and is a 2.8% increase in expenditure is offset a bit by what I think are going to be, higher revenues.
Yeah.
So add some more money to the budget, maybe it's offset by revenue.
Okay.
Suzanne's doing a bang-up job. Everybody wants a zoning permit. Apparently they
Right.
like dealing with her. She's advertising well. Everyone wants to build.
So,
Alright.
Just to kind of riff off that sort of, happy comment you just made, it is working out well, because what I'm hearing.
Personnel-wise,
No, I'm saying the split 20 hours thing.
yeah.
Because we went into that not ever doing that before.
Yeah, I think she could spend more hours, but I'm happy with the work that she does, and she doesn't appear to be pulling her hair out. So
She's able to manage it, it works
yeah,
well. And
yeah, we try to set expectations accordingly, especially with complaints and violations sort of enforcement. That things aren't going to happen tomorrow or the next week. That these things take time, and I think that's worked out.
That's great.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep going?
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Next item is the Conservation Commission.
We're gonna stay over here in the corner with all the chocolate.
We're going to join you.
guys can all come up to the guest of honor seat.
Did you get some, Val?
So we have a
you
number
get
of
some?
items. We have the budget spreadsheet, a memo talking about the budget, and then I'll say a major item or a new item in there for a study or a mapping project that I think you'll probably describe a little bit, and then some as I was going through that, interesting, I was going through that, I was, okay, what's this? I said, well, what's the planning commission think of this? What do the, and then the memos came in, so that was, the timing was perfect on that. So, do you wanna just sort of,
Let's
Pull
talk
up the
about pull up the spreadsheet, and Robert, why don't you just start explaining the natural resources? That's the big change, so.
So, natural resource inventory. The town, I think, would really benefit from a deliberate, comprehensive, integrated natural resources inventory. The way these things are done in other towns, the way they've been done in other towns by, different experts around the state, is typically there's a phase 1 and a phase 2. Phase 1 draws upon existing data, some desktop analysis. And the idea of what you get out of this is you get a product that, first of all, will access, all the available data, which is different than what goes on at the state. The state has their data, and it's sort of it's a coarser scale data. And then the other thing too is we can, we as a town, we have certain questions that we would like this data to answer. And we can work with a consultant and say, hey, these are the issues that are going on in our town. One of the things I would say is stormwater. We have a lot of water resources kind of stuff. Not different from the rest of the state. We have issues about habitat and connectivity and forest cover. And anyhow, we can work with our consultant to come up with a series of, I'll call them maps, but data layers, and it will be on a digital platform, and to address specific questions that are really relevant to our town. The other thing that we get out of this too is not just, we're not just going to be handed sort of, all right, here it is, here's your data, have at it, guys. But there's going to be, a lot of, there will be narrative, there will be explanations, there will be how do we use this data, and the experts can really guide us through how we use this data to our advantage. So that is what we're proposing. What we are looking for is funding for phase 1. Phase 2 in these natural resource inventories is sort of let me just say phase 1 can be a standalone product. Phase 2 typically is more on the ground field assessments, which then get integrated into our data and subsequent data layers. And so what happens as a result of phase 1, we may find areas that need further study, further ground truthing, and that's that's typically what the phase 2 will be, is more on the ground work, which then gets incorporated into our existing maps.
I think the point that comes across to me is when developers or somebody wants to subdivide or something like that, this will help them in the beginning of their cycle. The areas of importance will be identified. Say it's a deer yard or something, and you're going to put your house right in the middle of the deer yard. You can actually say, we can actually identify that area before that is built, so they can actually move it to another part of the property, say, for example. And that way, it would save some of the later on arguments down the road in the planning process.
Right, and I think to Mike's point too, that's one of the things that we, it would be our responsibility as a town, develop some of the protocols about how these things are going to get used. Yeah. For example, when somebody comes to the planning, or DRB, but plan even just to, say, hey, we want to build a house, planning could say, all right, we'll start here. Here is our map. This is, there'll be a protocol for looking at it, say, and let's go look at your land. And let's see what's going on in this land and see what are the considerations that should be, dealt with, from the beginning. The other thing, too, you know, when we get it, you know, Mike brings up another good point just about, you know, there's a lot of development activity in Hinesburg. And so as, you know, so there's gonna be more studies going on, you know, in support of specific development projects. And we would have the opportunity to create sort of templates for, so it's like if there's gonna be a study done in, you know, for, I'll just throw out Black Rock, for example. Well, here's the template, this is how we'd like you guys to do your study, and then the information that's generated in that study can, you know, sort of seamlessly be incorporated into our existing map and data layers.
Yeah, let me give you one more example. It's not really a natural resource example, but with Bissonnette Fields. After the fields had first been designed for the layout, it was discovered that there was a possibility of an ancient Indian village. So we had to go, after the first phase and all that money was spent, they had to reconfigure it and spend money again. Whereas if we'd have known about that in the beginning, we could have reconfigured it and saved the money. That's an example.
Do other adjoining towns have these for us on our borders?
Charlotte, right, we looked at.
We did look at the Charlotte map. They have a map that is really, it's, I think it's a good map. It's really parcel driven. You could go on the map and, so it's very useful in development review. You could go there and you could click on that and you could just see everything that's going on there. And the nice thing about their map too is that, because as you know, as we suggested, there's desktop analysis and there's, you know, on the ground truthing. So what shows up in their results, not only does, you know, sort of the natural resources or the considerations show up, but you could also see how much data there is to support those conclusions. Sometimes you click on it and you open it up and oh, well, this is just desktop analysis. This really needs a closer look. That suggested that these resources here need to be considered, but let's take a closer look. And other times you click on it and you open it up and there's just a wealth of data supporting, you know, what is displayed on the map. So I mean, that's a good, I mean, I think that's a good platform, but it's very development review sort of oriented. And we may decide that we want something like that, or we may want something, you know, a little different that maybe is not as development review oriented.
Richmond, Huntington,
Yeah, they are. And
Williston,
there's,
do they have anything?
And those are in the works right now. I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything online because I did look.
Yeah.
So,
Is there one online where we could go and look, and something similar? That would be good to
The
point
Charlotte
us.
one is
yeah, I
on
mean,
there.
I think Charlotte is, I mean, yeah, that's a good one to start with.
Okay, it's right on their town website.
Yep.
You're looking at flora and fauna and water?
We could look
Are those
at,
the areas that you're looking at?
no, I think,
Mostly rocks, because that's been pretty well known.
I mean, I think you look at a number of things. You also look at geology. You look at enduring features, right? But and sure, and a lot of things have been done, and they've been done. For example, the state has done it at their level, but other, you know, there's lots of things that have been done by other groups. Like for example, Vermont Land Trust is active in Hinesburg. They've done their studies. Lewis Creek Association has fantastic stuff, and Lewis Creek stuff is, you know, it's accessible. You could go to their website.
But it brings all of that other
This
information
consolidates-
together
It
in one place.
consolidates it, right.
Yeah,
And
it's taking
so-
everything into one piece.
Right, and so there is, yeah, there's lots of existing stuff out there, and that's what makes up most of this phase one. And, you know, what we're relying on our consultant to do is know where those data sources are, and, you know, consolidate them in a meaningful way that
Well,
serves
in
our
this part
purposes.
of the world, the rocks don't change that much over eons of time, but the water changes and the
Yep.
flora and fauna change
Mhm.
a lot,
Mm-hmm,
depending on the weather. And
yeah. Well, you're right,
the
I mean,
events. So would that be updated? And how would that be updated? I guess I'm talking about phase two, the surveying of what's out there.
yeah, well, it's, how would it get done, you know, so there would be updating, you know, once again, you know, any studies done in support of some of development can be integrated in as different organizations, you know, who are active in Hinesburg. Right now, Audubon has a real focus on Hinesburg because of their Golden Wing Warbler initiative. So they're doing studies, that kind of stuff can get in
UVM
there.
students are doing studies. Sometimes it's not worth putting on the website, but sometimes they come up with some good stuff that
Yeah.
they don't necessarily know that we're interested in it.
Yeah, but
So, and this is a sort of town-wide picture, but in some areas you might have some real detail because there was a lot of studies done and a little less here,
Right.
which may be okay, you may not actually
right,
need. Yeah.
and also as a result, we can say, wow, there's a lot of data here. There's some stuff up here, but we don't have a lot of data. Maybe we want to pay the consultant to fill that in and, you know, phase 2 and actually do some on the ground
Is it
study.
worth talking to Richmond, Huntington, Starksboro, and partnering with them? Because these kinds of features don't really respect town boundaries.
That is true. I guess, you know, I don't have a great answer for you. I'd say yes, in a perfect world, yes, that would be
Well,
helpful.
I would assume
But
when they do a survey of what's out there, they would be looking at, you know,
Their-
what's around us too, to sort of fill in the blanks.
well, yeah, and that's something that the state, you know, state resources are good at, you know, telling that story, particularly BioFinder, which is, you know, a little newer than their A&R Atlas, which is all. I mean, I use A&R Atlas all the time, and I find it very
there's a lot
useful.
of layers.
But there's, you know, but it just doesn't have the focus, you know, to drill down. And there is, and like I say, there's just a lot of data out there that's not ending up on the state sites. So this would be a way of, you know, getting it all together.
And how does this information stand up at the DRB? I mean, you know, so somebody comes in and this
So I think-
map shows something
So I'd rather
and
answer your question differently. It doesn't stand up to the DRB because that's when it always happens, and what we're trying to do is prevent that DRB confrontation, is by having the planning and information available early in the process. So that's really what it's getting away from the DRB confrontations that we always have at the last minute. It's in the planning, it's in the person walks up and says, I have a parcel over here, and what's it look like, and what are the features that I need to be very respectful of if I want to do something. That would be my goal, personally.
Right. So I could just, I could sort of share some of the Charlotte experience because I was there when we put this map together, and and it was sort of early on in the sort of the social media, the whole idea of, oh my God, somebody's going to put my property on a map and make that public, and you know, sort of sounds quaint, but you know, 20 years ago that was like, wow, that was really out there. But anyhow, so there was this whole issue: is it regulatory or is it advisory? And you know, I mean, that was something that the Selectboard, they were adamant. They said, well, you need to put on that map that this is advisory only. Really, I mean, and the regulatory thing is, I mean, it's wetlands is what's regulatory, and it's not even, you know. So you know, so to the extent that we improve the wetlands layer, then you know, technically that part would make it regulatory, because I mean, we do have the VSWI, but you know, wetlands will not regulate just to the VSWI. I mean, they want to know what's happening on the ground. So I think only to the extent that we enhance the wetlands layer does that become.
That's a state regulation. We could have even tighter Hinesburg regulations on the wetlands. And, I mean, it's not to say that if there was some important things that we found on something like that the planning commission, it was shared with the planning commission, it might work its way through the regulatory process. You know, and there's always the fear that if you find something, you know, it's going to become important. So a lot of attitudes are like, don't look because we won't find any. You know, if you look, you might find something. So better not to look. This is, as Mike says, a very proactive tool that makes it fair for everybody, and I think it's a worthwhile thing.
So the amount
pursue.
that's budgeted here would be for the phase one, I think we have a scope of work that we need to share with us. And that would gather all the information and put together the initial map with the layers.
Put together the platform, put together the narrative, so, what went into the layers, how we will, at least, from the consultant's perspective, how he or she would envision the town using these layers. And then hopefully, it would also, kind of set up sort of the protocol for feeding new data in as it becomes available.
So, because it's in the Conservation Commission, it sounds like the commission would take sort of ownership of this, and then, so it becomes a long-term sort of responsibility, I guess, so that, the expectation is the town and planning and zoning and whatnot get more information, or some study that's gonna happen, they say, we wanna make sure it incorporates into this, how do we get that into this format?
Right, and yes, I think, and I'm just going back to the Charlotte experience, and that was, I don't want to say it's an afterthought, but it was done afterwards. And they did figure it out, but I think we would do that from the start, how all this stuff, right.
More information that becomes available, that just happens holistically, depending on projects and what people are doing.
And there's so, and it's coming available so fast now. With remote imaging, it's crazy what's going on now throughout the state. So, yeah, we would want to make that, that would be a priority.
Think about the pipeline that came through and all the work they did looking at just where the pipeline went. Potentially, there might be information there that would get incorporated in this map.
Yeah.
I would guess, potentially.
I think it's similar to the green space plan that eventually got incorporated into the town plan.
Yeah, but I think, yes, I think Conservation Commission would be responsible for, kind of seeing this process through. But I think, it's certainly our hope and our intention that it would be embraced and used by, it would be a regular tool of the Planning Commission and certainly DRB, or potentially DRB and lots of other groups in town.
And the trails, even the
The
trails.
trails,
Yeah.
forest, land
Putting trails
trust.
everywhere is not necessarily the greatest idea.
Yeah.
Right, trails might be
Yeah.
interacting with
I mean-
those areas we want to protect.
Yeah.
Where we want to stay out of.
Right, this tool, it's certainly our intention that it would be widely,
And more of a living tool
Used,
so that we can
yeah.
keep it updated. and-
Alex, do we put you on the spot and say,
You can.
go, give us your opinion on,
So I'm supportive of the Conservation Commission's project. I think it's a good way to get the Conservation Commission fully invested in all these resource layers that planning and zoning deals with every day. And there's, as Andrea mentioned, there are definitely some data sources that we don't have access to and are not part of the sort of statewide database that we pull our information from. So that would be interesting to find out what the a more sophisticated natural resource consultant would come up with in terms of those data layers. I won't lie to you, phase one is a pulling together of existing information.
Yeah.
So there's not a whole lot of new data that comes into that unless there are certain pieces that we're not aware of. So I think the data that we use today, when a landowner comes in and says, I'm thinking of building on my property, where should I stay away from? I'm not sure that's gonna change a whole lot. We have mapping, technology today, and we sit down with landowners and have those conversations and look at steep slopes and wildlife habitat and wetlands and streams and riparian buffers and all of that. But it sounds, from talking with the Conservation Commission, it sounds like this is a way to gel all of that in a way that we might be able to make more available to the public and not just have it be available through a visit to the planning and
Right.
zoning office, which I think that would be really valuable. And the Regional Planning Commission has a web-based mapping site that they can construct for communities once there is an assemblage of data to put into it. So I think there's a ready vehicle for the products of this once it comes together. So that I'm excited about. As was mentioned, if we do have weak spots in the kinds of data that we need or that we say we want, phase one is a great way to identify those and then decide where do we focus on phase two. You know, where do we want to work with UVM and grad students on projects for, you know, X, Y, Z? Because right now we're never getting to that because there's not enough understanding of just the existing data.
So I'm thinking of bears and bobcats. There's a lot about deer, but deer, they only eat your garden. They don't eat your cats or things like that. But I'm reading on Front Porch Forum about bears coming out and taking down the bird feeder. So if somebody has a sighting of a bear, would that be able to go into your map, or a sighting of a bobcat? They've got a bigger range. They're more fluid.
No, but
Or would you be able to incorporate it?
I think a consultant,
I
I think
think
a
that's-
consultant could do that. I mean, if that's part of, you know, if we feel strongly that that's a layer that should be on there.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. If that's, after we get the basic concept of what we want, if there's something else like that, and I'll go back to the deer yard, that's just another layer that can be added.
Okay, great, thank you.
But I'm not sure that that's a focus right now. It's just getting the basic stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and so this process will be, you know, kind of long enough, deliberate enough, where you as the select board, you could decide, hey, you know what, you know, you whatever, you sleep on it for a while and say, you know, it'd be really good if we had answers to this specific question, and you could, you know, and hopefully we can work with you guys and work with the consultant, say, hey, this is something that's important to the select board. Can we, you know, can we get this data in there?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that's interesting also is this is an opportunity to, when you have all those layers, that people can start to ask questions, and you might, like, what's coming into my mind is, you know, it's mapping the radon, which has nothing to do with these natural systems, but that's something that ought to be on one of our maps, is where it's been found, the prevalence of it. So when people are, you know, developers are planning or homes, they know there's a lot of radon in this part of town. And if you start to look and see where there's, you know, correlation or causation on looking at the you know, why is there like lots more water showing up on this layer? You know, the different agencies who have different layers. You know, Fish and Wildlife has their water layer, DEC has their water layer, and why aren't they matching? And when we're looking at them together and we know what's on the ground here, we can give feedback to the A&R and say, you know, could we get on the same page here? Or why are you looking at things differently? And I you know, it focuses, it allows us to be more curious and generate questions that help us, I think, in the end, do better planning.
So, I mean, the fact is, there's more and more of this information available. This is almost, this is gonna sound bad, like a Wikipedia where you could put it all in one place and see it all. Where versus you're scattered about, you know? Yeah. All right. So for me, I think, you know, I'll take a look at the Charlotte, just to sort of visualize what we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, and so what you do, and you go on there and you'll click on the polygons, and that will pull
Similar
up
to the
data.
A&R layered map, is it the same?
No, you don't, well, there's only, I believe there's 4 layers you can
Okay.
turn on, but then what happens is you click on a polygon, something that shows up on the map, and
It
that
gives you
pulls up
information.
all the that pulls up a database report,
Okay.
you know, with all the underlying data that fed into that
All right.
layer, so.
Yeah, so it'd be
Yeah.
similar to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the goal, yeah.
Yeah.
Could be. yeah.
All right, unless it's more.
And
Okay.
one sort of follow-up question to Alex. The tools that, or maybe even you, Bob, the tools that they have here on the Charlotte site, is that what Alex was referring to?
Yes.
That there's this ready-made platform and we just feed it?
Well, I mean, they are hosting,
Is that where this comes?
they're hosting the Charlotte map. I don't, is that a platform that they're making?
I'm not sure if the
I'm-
Regional Planning Commission designed Charlotte's platform or not. I just know that the Regional Planning Commission has developed town sort of mapping websites for several
Probably is.
Chittenden County communities, and they will put whatever data a
Yeah, so I'm
municipality
not
wants
sure.
to have
It's-
up on there.
The address is a CCRP.
Well, I mean, they host it, they definitely
So that's
host,
their
they host the Charlotte site, whether that is the template
Ah,
that's available to all the towns, I don't know. Because they did that, I mean, Charlotte was the first one,
got it.
so,
And that was like over 10 years ago.
yes, well over 10 years ago.
And then the idea is that we update it as much as we want to update it, I guess.
We establish protocols because we
Yeah.
can't, you know, I mean, that's one of the things, you know, the data keeps coming in.
Sure.
And we have to decide what makes sense for us, you know, schedule and how we're gonna update it and what's the schedule that we're gonna update.
And that may or may not be a budget item from year to year.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we'll talk that'll be a really important part of this and we'll hammer that out. You know, early
Most
in
of the data
process.
we won't have control over. We're not gonna be owning and maintaining a streams database or a steep slopes database
just
or
is fed
or
from
a
all
road
places.
database. We're gonna pull all that from existing
Yeah,
data
but-
sources.
But it was a big deal, like I say, you know, there's a lot going on in Charlotte about, you know, individual, you know, assessments on the land. And that was very valuable information and, you know, figuring out how to feed that into the map, that was important. So I don't, you know,
It's very interesting.
yeah, as this stuff, you know, I don't know how many of these, you know, sort of private, landowner assessments are gonna be coming in, but it's really valuable data. Makes the map much stronger.
Okay. Are there any other questions either on this or the budget? I was just gonna ask on the tree planting, so we have tree planting in a couple of places. And I think it may have said something in the memo. These trees, this tree planting specifically for one area of town or to be used by the,
It's to be used by the tree warden.
Okay.
So that's with
just
the
a
money.
budget
It's a level
line
funded,
item,
it's
yeah.
a level funded.
So
Okay.
there's that general fund budget line item that's in the Conservation Commission budget, but it's the tree warden's discretion as far as
Okay.
what is used for. And then there's also money that we have in a capital fund that's, but what's in the general fund budget, if it's not used at the end of the fiscal year, it goes
Right.
back in.
So this is just some,
Yeah.
the warden's pin money for
Like it's
stuff he
been there
needs
for
to do.
several
during
years.
his-
the
Yeah,
amount
it's
of
been there
amount.
for a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time.
no, and then, so we wanna plant some trees that green up, he's got a couple spots, we'll get some trees and
Yep.
off we go.
So, and just along the tree warden, just heads up, I mean, pretty soon emerald ash.
We've had a
That's-
presentation
that?
on that, yeah.
Yeah,
So we have a bucket, everybody, we're looking for donations, so
Yeah.
we're way out.
Yeah.
Just so it's money in there, we'll be-
Well, I mean, it involves, Conservation Commission, Town
Right.
Forest.
Village trees,
So we
they're
had
all
some good
in the-
data that he shared with us.
Yep.
The idea of perhaps spending a little money on some key ash trees in town,
In
some of the,
village.
real couple of majestic ones, and then starting a plan to cull the ones that will eventually be in trouble before they get too big, and replanting maybe some.
right, and really, I think the important thing is figuring out where those trees are.
Well, we have,
an
we
inventory
have the
of all those
inventory,
trees.
oh, yeah.
For the
Yep.
street trees, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 6 or 8% of our street trees are
Yeah.
ash.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's got, we know exactly where they are and how big they are.
Good.
So that was in our minutes, in our packet, 2 meetings ago, I think. So if you're interested, it's a pretty good study, pretty good.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the budget? So the big item, I think, is this, project for consideration.
Not questions, but I want to compliment some of the work that's been done, especially the bird or bat houses that I've seen pop up around. It's a good visual for people to see and
Yeah.
actually wonder what's been going on. So, yeah, those are great.
That was from a grant.
That was from a
Tiny grant?
AVC, Association of Vermont Conservation Commission grant that we
Great.
secured.
Meg did a lot of work on that.
Yeah, she got CVU to build, the CVU students built them,
Yeah.
and so they're ready to go.
It's a good resource up there, CVU. Get
Absolutely.
kids to do things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some, there's some professors up there who are good to partner with, so.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah, you're right, it is a good resource up there.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through your the budget lines? We've just
Yeah,
talked about the natural
No, you got
resource,
the
anything
Lake
specific?
Iroquois is in there as a place to put it, I guess.
Yeah.
That's just where it's
Yeah.
lived.
So I struggle with Lake Iroquois Association versus Lake Iroquois District.
Mm-hmm, which is different.
Two different,
organization.
one's a
Yeah.
municipality.
Your association is an independent,
Yeah,
whereas the district is part of.
Is
the
a
It's a
district,
municipality.
Yeah.
That's-
but
yeah.
you'll be, if you should be watching our, like everyone else, watching our
Well, yeah.
meetings. But we did have the, Lake, the association folks here, and there was discussion, and they, told us, that they've been working much better together. So that, I know that was something you
Yeah.
had brought up a couple times, hoping, and then this go around, they brought that up, and working on the BB Road and,
BB Road and the beach.
yeah, and the beach, and working together with them, so that's good. Anything else? I guess not. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Take another piece of chocolate there.
I'm buzzing like crazy.
All right, so that's it, except for buildings, 2 more, buildings and facilities. I imagine you'll be,
Buildings and facilities, yep, I can speak to that one. And then I don't have the other one in here, but I will. We can talk about it.
building and facilities, I saw that one.
Yep,
Is that number
see, it's number 5D.
5D? Oh, yeah. All right. So we're on 5D is the
Yep.
building and facilities budget.
Why does this happen sometimes? Like,
What's it doing?
Throws up. I know, mine was doing it earlier today.
The reality is they're getting to be very old.
no, mine's new.
Oh, like it's new OS on it, it's like 10 something, because like I can't even update mine anymore.
Oh, yeah, no, this is a whole new iPad.
You look at it, just banging on the table.
You want an answer?
I need to fix it or break
Believe it or
it
not,
down.
it helped this one.
That was just a coincidence for the viewing audience. Please do not try this at home.
So are there any highlights in here that,
So, with this budget, I mean, if you look, start at the top, the salary line, it has the 3% increase
Yeah.
in there. 30% shows as our utility director's salary, is reflected in this budget, which is a percentage, I think, when you guys decided, when there was a change, and the utilities department was, created.
yeah,
They had the buildings and facilities, 30% is what they determined is the time that was actually spent in the past on buildings and facilities.
And that's,
So-
and is that specifically Eric, or it could be any of
It could
those
be any
guys?
of them, they
Yeah,
just
got it.
took 30% of his salary,
So-
but it's towards any of them could be
30%
doing it.
of one person.
One
But
person,
any of those three people
right,
could be in here working.
yeah. And so that reflected in there is also like the sidewalk maintainer,
Yeah,
the shoveling and things like that at town hall. That's all comes out of that salary line. And then, you know, the FICA
right.
is
Does it
from
seem
that.
like it's holding up, or?
I mean, yes, we have come in under, but it, you know, there's still a need, because it's such a small framework of even the utilities department, there's only three.
Yes.
If anyone's out, it's always a challenge, you know, managing projects that need to be done here and in the buildings and facilities realm. So I think if we're, you know, considering now or in the future adding any positions, this would be one of them, perhaps a part-time.
Position,
And
or-
maybe there's another half of that position in another department. But it's certainly something to look at. And when we're thinking about wanting to focus on taking care of what we have, and not only our buildings, but maintaining what we have.
Yeah.
So sidewalks and, you know, whatever that the town owns, parks,
mean,
that's,
This is a place where you think, you know, you get a college student or two to come just
It's
during the
summer.
summer months, as long as you had someone who was willing to manage them, not
Right,
you, but
right,
somebody who's willing
yeah.
to manage. And, you know, over the year, you say, okay, well, you know, we're gonna paint these things, we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna do this work, and then summertime comes around and you got the tools ready and off you go.
yeah, I mean, we could identify this
Even
time of the year
AmeriCorps.
of some things, projects that we really want to focus on, and then line those people up, that
Yeah.
whatever we have, whether it's some sort of volunteer thing or
Yes.
regular part-time scheduled summer employment.
So a big line here is the wall mowing contract and the cleaning services for the town hall itself.
Right.
We changed contractors in the last year, over a year, and that's
Yeah, and the
been-
cleaning that's gone really well
Good.
so far, so, we're just trying to kind of get a good handle on where we're tracking this year. And, so there isn't an adjustment made currently.
Does
and
this line for professional service, does that include cemeteries, or that's?
No,
That's separate.
no, that's separate. Another thing to consider is in the main hall, I mean, even though we aren't doing meetings, it's used a lot, the floor needs to be refinished at some point, so, that's another thing to be factoring in at some point, to be refinishing that hardwood floor. And really, that's the area that it shows where.
And I'm starting to look at the capital now. We've
Yep.
added some capital, well, we've got the capital for town hall upgrades, and then a little bit for lot one to start that process.
Yeah, and this is just, again, this is just sort of playing around with numbers. This isn't
Yeah.
the set thing, but just to be considering where you want to start putting money in for FY '20 and beyond. So last year is reflected in the FY '19 column in this current
Yeah.
year. That's what we put in the current year for FY '19. So FY '20 is highlighted in blue, the vertical column is what we're looking at. You know, do we want to do some of the same things that we did in this current year? Are there some additional things, or, you know, so.
Yeah.
This is just a conversation starter for you guys to be sort
Yeah,
of thinking
and
in terms of
The pickup
that.
is just a percentage of.
It's just a
the pickup.
percentage, yep,
Yeah.
yep. So just a small percentage of it is reflected in the buildings and facilities general fund budget, and the remainder is in the enterprise fund for water and wastewater.
I mean, I, you know, this sort of gets to one of my goals is to maintain what we have here.
Yeah,
And some of this, you know, sidewalk construction may not be a new construction adding, it may be
it's
fixing the section.
yeah,
And the town hall, we've talked about maintaining that, sidewalk plow sander, same thing,
Yeah.
so that you know, if we have problems or we need to do something, we've got a little bit there that we can
So,
do, and obviously we can adjust those. If
Right.
something, you know, we needed to take from Peter to pay Paul on something that came up.
the only thing that is set in stone on a capital improvement plan is the current year you're budgeting for. So once you land on that, you're projecting out what the next, 4 to 5
Yeah.
years are, but that can change, because every year, every January,
Stop.
you're gonna be looking at that, having a public meeting at your January meetings to, approve the capital plan and expenditures, so, the money the year you're budgeting for is what's set in stone.
Right.
Beyond that is a plan.
Yeah.
I know people are anxious to have us do something on Lot 1, but I'm wondering, with Al talking about moving the fire department over to Tailhook, and who knows what's gonna happen to that building, whether it'd be better to hold off on Lot 1 until that gets all settled.
Well, I don't see us doing anything. This is just putting money
This is just
aside.
putting the money
Oh,
aside.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, we
thank
could
you.
potentially, if there was something, I was walking by it yesterday saying, geez, if we had a little bit, what would we do? Is there anything we might improve in just some of the areas?
Yeah.
And maybe there is, I don't know.
And in addition, in the sidewalk fund, sidewalk construction, you'll also see, remember we talked with Tyler Billingsley last summer, and so his proposal is also in there.
To survey existing sidewalks.
Yeah,
and-
to take care of what
Come
we
up with a
have before we
plan.
can, consider talking about adding more sidewalk. We
Yeah.
really want to maintain what we have, and so,
So with the Tyler Billingsley proposal, take a look at this section of sidewalk in particular, like across from the White Church.
It's not, yeah,
at the whole.
yeah.
And
Whole
then
existing
with that
infrastructure.
information, put together a plan to do something about
If you
that?
look on 5D, Hinesburg sidewalk,
Yeah, it was
CIP,
written up in there.
he has it written up, as far as what he would be
Yeah.
doing. So he'd be doing a complete site walk inspection of all of our existing sidewalks.
Right, I understand that, but I'm trying to get at specifically that one particular sidewalk. Like, would we ideally wait for Tyler to do his entire study? We
He-
already know that piece of sidewalk needs to be improved.
He would have this done by summer, so this would be done by July 1st. So he would be start doing all of this work. He could be doing the initial, plan of it, and
Right.
then have it in place and ready so that,
Would be an estimate of what it would cost, what some of the infrastructure around it, so there's some drainage issues and whatnot around it,
yeah.
so.
Drainage and safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Those are
mean,
the two.
you're right, that's probably the one that would come to the top, I would
Does
think.
it's one of the
He would
ones that comes to me.
prioritize, give you sort of a list of.
Sure.
And then, yeah, and
priority.
then his study would give us an indication of, are we putting enough aside,
Yes.
or not? And, we would share, obviously he sees that, and he
Right.
could come back and say, initially it's gonna cost X amount to get us to a point, and then after that, this is about what the maintenance will be. Or the maintenance is fine, and, if we do that every year, we're gonna catch up.
And as part of the asset management plan he's currently doing in the utilities department.
Oh, beautiful.
So they're looking at what underground infrastructure, so you want to align those two.
Yep.
So that we're not, fixing and repairing a section of sidewalk that, all of a sudden, now, we're also gonna be taking it out because we're replacing some of the
Right.
underground
We're
infrastructure.
doing things the way the state does.
I don't know, it just seems to me like it'd be good to plan this out and sort of coordinate, so that's the idea of,
That's crazy
of this
talk.
and having, I know, crazy talk, but.
So, in you mentioning that, Renee, that reminds me of the tools that we talked to Eric about that he was bringing online.
The asset
for-
management plan, that's
Yeah.
what I'm just talking, yeah.
No, but remember, that the mapping tool for all the lights. Yeah. What is that
That's
called?
it.
The asset management
That's it.
plan,
No, I thought there was a piece of software or
for
something.
which one?
For Eric uses this piece of software to map where all the pipes are.
Yeah. That's the asset management
yeah,
plan.
That's just the name of it.
That's
It
the name
is
of the
a-
tool.
That's the
it is a-
name of it,
It is
yeah,
a tool,
Yeah,
a
there's.
GIS tool.
Yeah, I thought there was another name for it.
yeah.
So he's using that currently.
So yes,
Yeah.
they've been currently
the
mapping it
grants.
all out, the grant is there, and so they're.
So that's
they're
underway.
mapping out. Yep, it's
Okay.
underway.
Beautiful.
So is this the capital plan, are you feeling okay with this?
I mean, this is something that you guys had
Yes.
talked about, I brought
Yeah.
it to you, this past summer, and so this is just, here we're now in budget season.
Yep,
To
okay.
be,
But you're feeling, there's no significant, you know, this is what we talked about, but you're feeling like this is a good start for this year.
these are the things that are identified in, let me get back to your page here. In the capital narrative. So I'm just
Yeah.
I highlighted, some of those things for
Yeah.
you to consider. The highlighted in yellow are ones that we already have done and that did this in this current year. But, may have a different amount, like in the current year, we only put 2,500 in sidewalk construction.
Right.
If we're really thinking about, looking at these and improving, right now I have a proposed 5,000, but this is just food for thought
Yeah.
for you guys, just to be
Right.
thinking.
Okay,
Highlighted in blue are ones that we didn't put money aside for yet,
yeah,
in the current year.
But
but
we've talked about
Those
it.
are things that we've talked about, so the lot one, do you wanna put money towards that? The sidewalk plow and sander, it's been a discussion each year for the last couple of years, it is an aging, thing, and so do we wanna start putting money aside, thinking about replacing it with something that maybe is a better fit for our sidewalks? That's
Yeah.
a thought for you.
okay.
So, and then your reserves tab, that shows what we have already currently in reserves. And where is it? Is it not showing up?
Blank.
Huh,
Got nothing.
interesting.
Got nothing.
Got nothing. I guess we have zero balance. Yeah. Well, it was there. Anyway,
Do we put the 116 Charlotte Road intersection
In here.
in
then?
here as a
Yeah.
capital project, or
So we might wanna add that line
Yeah.
in there.
in buildings and facilities as opposed to
Yeah.
in highway?
yep.
Since it's, it is primarily a sidewalk project.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there, I'm gonna get off track, so go ahead, finish up with this.
Okay. Any other comments on
Think
this?
about when you're gonna open your.
So we'll add that line in there and be able to consider it.
Okay. Let's see, what else? Another thing related to this, I mean, we have the quotes for the roof, which we've talked about. So those would be things that would be, go towards our capital thing that
Would
we
come
have
off
for
the
town
capital,
hall. Yep, yep.
The town hall.
What's that?
This roof.
Yes,
Yeah,
this roof, of
So
town
you
hall,
had
so
a,
slate
I think, a
roof.
quote or an idea.
We've got
for some
3 quotes that we've
maintenance.
received, yep. And so what it would be having the contractor come up and replace the slate, the pieces that have already come off, replace those and do a full inspection of the roof. And then have a regular, annual checkup so that they have a good, base of how the condition of the roof is, and then it's,
And the first go around, we'll get more information on,
Yeah,
on
right.
its health and then. So it's-
sort of develop a plan of how much we should be putting aside
Right.
and that for the roof.
Am I remembering correctly that it's a slate roof?
It is
Yeah.
a slate roof,
And
yes.
Can you get any kind of natural
Yes,
historic
yep,
grant?
yep, and so that's why we went through the Historic Preservation Fund. And so we got, in order to have that analysis done of Town Hall, so there were certain things recommendations they made. So they paid for a portion of the consultant, the person to come out and do that assessment. And now, because we did that, we'll be eligible for more grant funding to do some of this work that needs to be done. So it was important to have that step first, because then that makes us eligible for grant funding to take care of a historic building and any of some of the work that needs to be done. So it should help us in the long run as we're taking care of this building.
Any other items on this?
Town Forest Committee now they're doing their first timber harvesting. So they did not make a request this year. They usually make an annual request of
Yeah.
$1,500, and they're planning to use their revenue from their timber harvesting to cover any expenses that they have. We just got the first check from the first 2 loads. And they did a walk yesterday, I think, of that, so. Did you go on it? So, yeah. Yeah. So anyhow, yeah.
Okay.
So they've been working with Ethan Tapper, the Chittenden County Forester. So I think he led that walk.
The logger.
Yep, Tim Brown is the logger. So. I think that is going
The
well.
question I had is, building utilities, have we seen significant savings from the trackers? Or is that mostly on the water, wastewater?
No, they should, we can ask, Missy to, look at the credits and then how much the credits were and then how much the, bond
Bond payments.
and O&M costs were. Last year it was kind of basically a
What we
roughly.
budgeted was a wash, so we
Yeah.
could get more information. So this year, hopefully,
This
we'll
year
have a
we'll have
little
it
more
better,
information to,
Although I'll add, this hasn't been a very good solar year. It's one of the
Not
worst
yet.
ever.
right.
Particularly November, let me
That's
just
right.
say, November, I think the sun came out twice.
Not the summer though, should have been all the way through from July through October. Should have been.
July was
Right.
pretty good, June, August was okay, but this fall, and a couple of months in the spring were bad. Again, it's like farming, but, yeah, I'll ask Missy to do that, so she's got a handle on, those credits come in to their meter, water and wastewater, and she turns around and pays the town those credits. And then, out the other side is the bond vote and the O&M costs.
So, yeah, so we put,
November, it's pretty,
Yeah.
pretty dead. November,
It's the worst month ever.
yeah.
it's pretty bad.
The next month after that actually is as good, yet there's less sunlight.
But like
It's just really
August,
cloudy.
August it goes,
Yeah,
straight
yeah.
way up,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
So I wish the little reserves tab was in there so you could see the balances of,
It's on our, isn't
Yeah,
it?
there is, but it's just
Oh, it's
empty.
blank.
yeah, it was in there. I'm not sure what happened, so, anyway. But if you look at the capital improvement plan, so here, actually, no, on the reserves, I do have them indicated in the left-hand column for what was as of 6/30/18. So on the left-hand column, if you look up here on the screen in your, the capital improvement plan for buildings and facilities. In reserves for the tree planting fund, as of 6/30/18, and there was $3,214. And then in this current year, we put another 1,000.
Yeah.
So we would have, as of 6/30/19, we'd have 4,214.
Yep.
I don't know if he's used any from that one. He hadn't the last I checked, so I'll have to see if there's been any
Maybe
taken out
that's
of that.
where we can use it for
Yeah,
the
Injections in
injections.
the
Yes,
spring.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's,
And the sidewalk, we've saved up a little bit.
the
over last
sidewalk,
couple
so we've
years.
had almost 15,000 in
Yeah.
there, since 6/30/18. We put 25 in the current year. What I'm saying is, maybe we do
Potentially
5,000,
more,
whatever, so if you look to the far right, if we actually did follow this plan, after FY '24, we'd have 42,442.91 that we would have saved for the sidewalk, and so this just kind of gives you
Okay.
an idea.
Well, and also if you look down on the bottom of it being, well, it's 18,000, but if we thought about always wanting to have $20,000
Right,
putting towards it, so it could be, might be different things, but
right.
that it's 20,000 is, a half a cent.
Right, so that's why I wanted to
On
kind
that,
of show you this spreadsheet, just so
Tax
you could
rate.
see what that would
Yeah.
change. And that's, so if you look at, this is just one snapshot of it, and then you look at all the other departments. And so, if you want to try to keep it sort of level, and something's coming off, but then you're putting something else, you're maybe saving a little more towards another area. So in this, because in FY '19, the current year, rather than doing the 5,000 in sidewalks, we were trying to make things work, so we decreased
Yeah,
it to
we-
25.
Yep.
I bump it back up for, more consecutive years to get back on that track.
Okay.
But you could bump it up to 7,500 to offset the 2,500 that we took out of FY '19, or,
Right, or, you know, or on lot one, we may end up putting, you know, after FY '21, we might put more in there because
Absolutely.
we're gonna save up and be able to do a big project there or something.
Yeah. So what's in the blue, vertical column is the only thing that we have to, definitely say what we're gonna put in for FY '20.
Yes.
The rest of it is a plan.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions on this? Next
Next,
is the town
I'm
administrator.
realizing I didn't load
Yeah, I
that
didn't
one
see
up.
that one in here.
So we can either do, I can pull
Are you
the,
coming to the next meeting?
I don't know, I'm not sure. I'll have to look at my schedule. It's a new year, new schedule. I don't have the calendar out. It's possible, it's likely I'll be here, but, so we could either talk about that at the next meeting, or we
First
could,
thing.
yeah, we could do that as the
So,
first thing,
I think
or
the only item I'm looking at is the legal
legal.
line.
Yep,
Maybe,
So-
maybe you could, well, we've had copies, but you could maybe send it out to us.
yeah, well, let's go,
First thing.
it was in December 10th.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's look where we
And you
tracked.
could say
We're-
if there's any
So in
changes.
legal, right now, we're tracking okay. Here's the budget status report as of, this was in your last week's packet. So for legal, let's get down to, but that can change because of how the billing works and, they bill monthly, so. Let's see, as of November 30th, income. Here we are.
And on December 3rd, we have the overall budget.
Yep.
Which has,
Which has the town.
which has it in there.
Yeah, but I'm just looking for legal and where we're tracking right now in the current year.
So we have attorney fees, we put at 30,000, for fiscal year 20, and is that staying the same? You haven't changed that at all,
For which one?
we're showing.
That's what, yeah, I mean, I have it in there right now.
We're at, we had 28 last year.
Yeah.
This year's budget, we've got at 30.
I have 30. But then I think we just need to, I only did that because of some of the current issues we have going on that don't appear to be going away anytime,
Right.
soon.
Gilman Road and,
Yep.
yeah.
But if I can find the current legal where we're at. Not sure why I'm not finding, oh, here it is. So here we are at the end of November. We budgeted 28 in the current year. It shows only $5,348.93, so that's 19% of the total budgeted amount was used. Again, it's sort of a monthly billing, so
Yeah.
we may get a
It's gonna
big
go
chunk
up a little bit, yeah.
pretty soon.
But at least
So-
we're not more than 50%, we're
No,
less than.
no.
If it was
Right.
spread evenly.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any other changes that,
me
you've
just
done
go-
since December? So in December 3rd, we have it. We can
Yeah,
look
let me
at
just
it.
go into the December 3rd one.
No, I've got it
Here it is.
as
I got it.
3B.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there it
Okay.
is.
So I highlighted the select board wages, because I think that's something that,
Yeah,
maybe we should
yeah.
to revisit. And
How do we have that conversation? Like, are we just basing it on like other towns? Do we just a flat rate? Do we lower it? Do we leave it alone?
Well, we've lowered it in the past and it's been. up
Do we
to
just-
town.
Yeah, you can't.
No, that's right, yeah.
Right, so that's why I'm asking is how do we do this? Do we just have Ken come in again and? I mean, I sort of say that jokingly, but like,
Right.
I know we can't, so
Right.
what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is.
What are you suggesting there?
I think it's something we just need to look at and get an amount. I don't know if it's something that I can put in there, if you're saying that we'll have to check in to see how
Yeah, I guess
how we
should
propose
probably
that.
look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal opinion is, I'm not looking to make any changes, but,
Uh-huh.
you know, that's something.
Yeah,
that-
nor was
Or-
I.
It's just something that I know that, you know, you guys put a lot of time in, and it's something people have mentioned before, so.
A few more cookies at our meeting
Yeah,
would be
no,
okay,
I
you know?
know, I know. That's right, exactly.
Yeah, a couple $100 in food
Yeah,
over the
well.
last year might go a long way.
It's actually like not a bad idea,
It
honestly.
isn't, yeah.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
I don't know about the rest of you, but I come straight from work into here
yeah.
Peanut butter and jelly.
every
yeah.
every
Yeah.
meeting, and I
Yeah.
barely make it. You know,
So, I mean, we could certainly do that, especially, I mean, I had grand plans of making things, but it's just
Well,
not
yeah,
gonna
no, but I'm
turn in. But yeah, but no, but we
could.
we could just plan to do some more, you know, pizza and different things like that.
When we have, early meetings and
Yeah.
stuff. That's
Yeah,
a nice treat.
yep.
So just leave it alone for right now.
So I don't have anything, I'm trying to get a more specific, quote I got, on the town report. And so they gave me something that was a little quite different from last year, so I want them to relook at it again.
But you got a number in there.
Yep,
yeah?
I have a number in there that's just keeping what we had. You're on 10
Yeah.
on the, under select board. Yep. Let's see, which one am I
Is
at
the
here?
select board miscellaneous if we wanted to do training or, we've had somebody come in and facilitate?
So the facilitator one that you had is reflected
Professional
in
development.
dues, meetings, and subscriptions. That's where, I think it was, that line was charged there, which typically, I'll have to ask, them about that, because typically that is just a reflection of our, VLCT dues. So if you're looking at FY18 actuals, it looks like it went way over budget, but that was when you had a consultant that you hired.
Facilitate.
Facilitator.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So that could have been something that maybe it was taken out of their professional services or select board miscellaneous, like you said. Select board miscellaneous is also used if we've, for like a staff to honor their either anniversary or something like that.
Okay.
It comes out of that line. So it's certainly a line that, we could start using.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a lot of money.
Right.
But sometimes those things can go a long way.
Yep,
Whether it's, a pizza or something for
right,
other folks,
yep.
other workers. And so that's it. It's really just those two, the select board and the town administrator.
Is there
Yeah.
anything that the five of us need or would find useful to do the work that we do that we could talk about in terms of budget? I don't have anything in mind per se. but-
Trainings or anything like that?
Well, like
or-
the time stuff.
Yes.
We identified the
I'll order
iPads years ago as a thing. I guess I'm saying something like that. Is there anything that this other four of you ever think about? Jesus, I wish I had, or wish we did, and that would come up in this conversation. Time is the big one for me too, but
Yeah, I mean, I could see us doing a facilitated meeting
Facilitator, I think
to,
the retreat
yeah,
Yeah.
thing is the
yeah, I think
best.
that
Yeah.
would be good, and we can work on particular things. We started to work on some things. We haven't really, there's more to do there. So, that might be something to look at right after the town, annual meeting.
the slow part
I
of the year.
think, well, it's not exactly select board,
Sure.
but I think the opportunity to be able to hire like an AmeriCorps person, somebody to help in whether there's projects that you guys can think of but how it will be helpful for you and not extra work to have another staff person, and whether we wanted to maybe take this year to investigate what kind of positions typically AmeriCorps volunteers are, and then what we would have to put in the budget next year to think about how we would utilize somebody like that. Because I know a lot of nonprofits take advantage of that, but it means that there's a staff person who they have to be responsible to. Yeah. But it might help us. I mean, I think we get a tremendous amount done for the very small staff that we have.
Yeah.
And I was more thinking of, well, is there ways that we as the select board can help to move things along? Like actually on the way over here, I was thinking about wanting to ask about the Route 116 Charlotte Road project and whether, I mean, certainly there's prioritization, but are there projects or things that it's helpful to have us help on or not?
Yeah.
Or this, certain tasks that another staff person could do. Because in my mind, that's potentially what we need is.
I think what might help us, and I think you guys have done this in the past, is really to think about, as we're about ready to embark on a new calendar year, think about some priorities, or maybe we don't do it by calendar year since we operate on fiscal year, but think about what areas we really want us to focus on, and so that we can sort of order our work accordingly
Well,
to
that
those
would be-
prioritize.
That would-
yeah.
That would be
during
the reason to do
Right.
to do an offsite at, right after the town meeting, to
Yeah.
sort of say, okay,
Here's
what are we
the-
gonna work on in the next 6 months before budget time comes around again?
Yeah. And so that could be something that we, as a topic for a retreat.
Yes, right.
Yep.
Come up with a new list of 33.
Yes.
Right.
I kind of think Lot 1 would be something that an AmeriCorps person or whoever, whatever organization, could spearhead a fundraising campaign. Because I think this thing is kind of bogged down unnecessarily. I know Bristol, they put together a beautiful playground, and I don't think Lot 1 needs to be full-blown
No, it's
paths
just a
and
green
trails.
space, yeah.
A few benches and maybe
Yeah.
That's
a
exactly
What we
playground.
said yesterday.
Talking
yeah.
about just putting a there.
Just putting a there
Yeah.
and letting people develop it,
Figure it out.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
I think we put just way too much thought into engineering and this, where if you just, have
Yeah.
the community come together, like they did for the
Like you said.
Bissonnette Fields.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Same type of thing on a much
Yeah.
smaller scale, and I
Yeah.
think it would get done a
But
whole lot
even just
faster
some
than us trying to
plantings,
budget it.
some benches,
Simple things.
maybe a little gazebo, I don't know, but it doesn't have to be a lot.
No,
And then,
Community gardens.
and then
People will be
can use
using it.
Yeah,
right.
And kids do, I mean, I do see in
Yeah.
the summer, a
Yeah.
lot of times people are out there.
But simple things like
Yeah.
that would give
Yeah.
them more of a reason just to go use it.
Yeah.
and I'm just sort of looking at the time, so,
Yeah.
can we, sort of summarize where we are on the budget and, the process? So I think the next time we get together, we're gonna need to start making some decisions.
Right,
So we talked
absolutely.
about, going back and looking at it again in the same order. We kind of preliminary look at it. And then that next time, we could look at what revenues are and what sort of the bottom line is before we start, making
Yeah.
some real decisions.
I think, so what my goal would be for the next time is to have it all put in so you see it all together, right? I specifically wanted to have you look at everything just individually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that we've gone through all of that, then I can upload all of that information into the master spreadsheet. So you can kind of see where we're at, and then what those additional items that you haven't said, yes, we'll do that, how much that would
Right.
increase or
Right.
decrease things. So then you can sort of choose from a menu of, okay, here's where we're at, here's where the bottom line of the budget is. We have a, whatever, I think we were at a 1.7 or 8% increase of expenditures over last year. And so if you add this item, here's where we're gonna land. If you add this item and, sort of,
I think we also need to, each department sort of added what their salary change would be. I think we gotta come up with, just put something in there so we can see the impact to all the budget.
Yeah.
And I'm all right with letting Renee sort of come up with a number. I mean, it won't be 10%, it won't be 1%, so,
Right.
you know, it's gonna be somewhere it'd be 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5, maybe you would justify that, I don't know what it would be, but there'd be something there, so I'd be okay, so the next time we come, we have something there, and then, you know, we could say, oh, if we, you know, as we're talking about the big picture, we could say, if we change that by 0.25%, here's what it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's something to look at, up or down, and, you know, and some of the other things we could start to see, all right, well, it would be good to put some money in on the Charlotte intersection. Here's what $10,000 looks like.
Yeah. And so you'll have not only the expenditure side, but you'll have the revenues
Right.
also put in there. And so when we're having these conversations, then I can, you know, put things in, plug them in as we're talking about them. You can see how that impacts the percentages.
Right.
So I'll have the formulas in there so that you can kind of see it live as you're
Right.
doing it.
That would be
And then
good.
we can take something out and put something else in there, and just so you're kind of seeing it,
So
the impact.
do you think by the next time you'll have the revenues?
I'm certainly, yeah, I'm
That's your
certainly gonna
goal.
try.
I
That's
know.
my
Yeah,
goal.
yeah, I
And
get
then,
that.
and as
So
long
it'd
as
be
no
good to
other,
have that, and you could, that might be the first place we start,
Uh-huh.
and you could say, you know, I mean, obviously, some of it is, it's not guesswork, it's estimation. So you
Uh-huh.
sort of say, here it is, this is a little conservative, this is a little, you know, here's where we are, and then from there, we're gonna be able to see the bottom line, and then go back and look at all the budgets, and hopefully, you know, say, yeah, this is something we talked about, this is a goal of ours, let's make sure it stays in. And here's something that's sort of optional, maybe, you know, it's not time this year. So
Right.
it's a sort of give and take.
and again, you're not just looking at what you're gonna do in FY20, but you're thinking, okay, so if we don't
Right.
do it this year, then how's that gonna
gonna
impact
play it, yeah.
FY21? Is that,
Right.
then you're gonna, so
Right.
the goal is, I think, would be to try to sort of keep it a little more level rather
Yeah.
than these spikes up and down.
Yeah,
Look at a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else with the budget stuff?
Do we talk specifically about what we're facing with wastewater facility upgrades and how that'll impact this budget?
Yeah, it won't really.
It's a
this-
separate,
I know it's a separate thing,
Right.
but
it's something
It
to
is,
look
but
at.
it
So
isn't.
if you're looking
You know what I mean?
at, you know, the total of our debt, that's factored in. Anything we have existing, it doesn't factor in, because obviously we're just in the preliminary piece of
Yeah. We won't-
trying
we
the price.
won't
So we
have
aren't gonna
any-
have that information in.
So maybe somewhere into January, we might have some conceptual costs.
Yeah.
I know we have a mid-February deadline of some sort we have to meet. And
Yeah.
But you
So-
can look at that debt with what we have already and what's projected out of existing debt that we have. You can see where we're at, you know, potentially when when we start paying on the wastewater upgrade, you know, so you can kind of look out.
And we still have to sort of figure out, you know, how much funds could come in for that. It's obviously gonna cost money.
Sure. Right.
But it's gonna be really hard to say exactly how much.
Right.
We might have a slightly better look at it mid-January, but certainly not before we won't have a heck of a lot more information before we have to move this forward. We got the first meeting in January, then the second meeting in January. By the third meeting in January, we should be really kind of done, and we're starting to look at the warnings.
Yeah.
Because by the fourth meeting, the warnings all have to be done, so.
Oh, yeah.
All right? Let's keep moving.
Anybody want to have 2 meetings a day again?
Yes. I know,
Check
I'm pretty
that off.
beat right now.
Right.
Town administrators report.
It's been
David, who was
an
with us this morning.
active,
That's like his
active
life.
time, I think, like I said.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot going on. We've had, you know, between the budget and the insurance piece, but again, that was, you know, it was a good practice to go through that process, and I think in the end, we realize that, you know, we are getting a good value, but it's always good to, when you're, you know, big ticket items like that, to just
Yeah.
to make sure and do our due diligence, and so I feel we did that. Other things going on, kind of hard to think about that at this time.
You
with
wanna
my
talk about the sidewalk?
sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, so we have in our packet, a proposal from, Tyler.
Yeah, so we talked about that a little bit in the buildings and facilities piece. So you guys had, we talked about that in June, I think, of this year, of Tyler just doing the sort of a look at our entire sidewalk network and then doing a, sort of prioritizing where the areas that need most attention first and a cost associated with that and all of that. So
So
that's,
is there a point where we would, you know, take a close look at that and make a decision to?
Like he's ready to move forward.
he could be,
correct?
yes, yeah. So he has a figure of doing all of that planning work.
Yeah.
But with the, and so we have money in our capital, you know, for sidewalks that we could, you know, use for that. But as far as budgeting more money for FY '20, we want to be thinking about, okay, so if we really are gonna start doing that
If
work.
he does say spend money here,
Yes, then we
yeah.
want to make sure we have more money that we're replenishing each
Logical
year.
conclusion.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So we have that in our packet, we should maybe
that's
take
in
a
your
look at
packet.
it and
Yeah,
consider a decision in the
Yeah.
next month or two.
yeah. And the Village North sidewalk,
A decision on Tyler's proposal?
Yeah.
Didn't he say 30 days or something?
his, I mean, his,
That's
in his
standard
proposal, it's just
Yeah.
sort of a standard language of, that it's good for. But if we give him the green light to go start it, he could start as early as a couple weeks from now. He said it's good to be doing that type of work this time of year when there's no snow on the ground, you know, on the sidewalk, so he can really be going through the sidewalk. He's easier to be doing it than in the summer when he's gonna be really busy with other projects. Yeah, so timing wise, this would be the good time to be doing that sort of planning.
Do you have any idea when sidewalk construction starts for the Meadow Mist to the village?
Meadow Mist is, I think, is scheduled
That's a
into
long ways
FY
Yeah.
'20 at the probably earliest.
I knew it was out there, but I just didn't
Yeah.
know how far out there,
So
because now the
village-
buildings are there.
Village North Sidewalk is finally coming in, should be going out to bid. So that's, we've got the approval now to go out to bid.
Yeah.
And so that notice will be going in as soon as we get the language, will be going in the papers. And the bids will be due, is it
January something.
January something? Yeah,
Good.
so,
Yeah.
so that one is,
In a few weeks, yeah.
actually really moving forward.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah.
If I say that out loud.
Something,
So getting back to the sidewalk study.
Yeah.
So it's $3,500, so we do have money in our
Yeah.
budget to do that.
yep,
I would propose that, let's take a close look at that
Yeah.
and consider a decision, one way or the other, on our next meeting.
I agree.
We could
Yeah.
just have that as a short item and
Yeah.
say, and then, you know, your recommendation, one way or the other, too.
yeah,
on
I
that.
mean, I, like I said, I initiated this conversation with
Yeah.
Tyler last,
Yeah, I
probably
remember
last
we
May.
talked about it, yeah. So-
And I think it's a,
And, you know, he's a local guy, he's
Yep.
starting to know our infrastructure, he's getting involved.
Yeah.
And so we talked a couple of years ago about having a resource that we could use. And as long, and he's been doing it, and as long as we're satisfied,
I think
It
this
seems
price
to
is a
make
very
sense.
cost-effective way of doing this work and gets us gives us a plan, you
yeah,
know, and how to
because that's what we
prioritize it.
need. Otherwise, we're,
Mm-hmm.
not that area doesn't need it, but we're sort of guessing that's the area. He may point out another area that if we don't do something, you know, spend
We're gonna lose it. something.
$4,000 now, we're gonna spend.
But not only is he gonna prioritize areas, but he's gonna give us a cost estimate
Yes,
associated with what
yes.
would, you know, cost to do it, so that we know, okay, do we have the funds to take care of this piece now, or we need to know what we need to budget. So
And
it'll be
working
helpful.
within his schedule,
Yeah.
you know, makes it work better too.
Right, yeah,
Rather than having somebody do it when it's high cost,
right.
so. All right, anything more on select board, on town administrator?
I think that's all I've got in
All
my.
right, select board
system
forum?
now.
You can go first, Tom. We know what you're gonna say.
Get your tickets. January 4th,
Yeah.
Friday night, the big party's all set. Quadra at the Old Lantern.
I have a couple items. One is, it looks like I probably will be remote on the January 7th,
January 7th.
so I'd be looking for you to
I plan on being here, so that
take
should,
the
that
hot
should go
seat.
good.
Yeah,
I mean, that should
and
go well.
I'll call in, I'll be able to watch online, and, yeah. So, I won't be in my pajamas, maybe.
We won't see you.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have sorry, so we have somebody.
I already had it in there.
Oh,
Look at
yeah.
that, no fill.
We have somebody who's remote at work, and we have a monthly meeting. And, we call him all the time because he's part of it, but it's working out really well. And so we had a monthly meeting, and so they said, "Oh, and we were looking at stuff, and he said, hey, we've got so and so online. We've got him hooked up so we can see him." So they said they put him on. And he had no shirt on, it was so, because he's down south, but they did it on purpose, but everybody was laughing. It was just, it was hilarious.
Nice.
All right, sorry.
But
The
you
other
will be
thing.
wearing a shirt, just for
Yeah,
the
I'll
record.
definitely be wearing a shirt. And two other items. One, I had a letter from, an email from Wayne Schwab, who lives with Renata Park near CVU, and just pointing out, I'll forward it to you.
Okay.
How happy and satisfied he is with the highway crew. I should have said this while Mike was here, but apparently problem with his mailbox, and within a week they put in a new one, all ready to go. The next day, put numbers on it, so he thought that he was quite pleased, and that was good to get. He's a nice man.
Yeah, make sure Mike sees that one.
Yes, I will forward it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is I did get called by the citizen today. They were curious on the executive session, so I didn't really answer. All I did was basically sort of say, sort of a summary of what happened this morning, and I'll say that for the public. We did have an executive session to just really get an update on where we are with the Hannafords and DRB decision. We do have a motion to stay the 120-day clock, and we're waiting for a decision on that motion. I think the select board feels it's the best approach for the town to wait on that. That's a legally prudent approach to minimize our exposure and our costs. And it's good to wait because there's a lot of other legal decisions that are happening around the DRB denial, and any of those decisions would impact, what we might choose to do or not to do. At executive session, our council clarified what our options would be, and we continue to weigh those options. And just a reminder that this is a very sticky issue, and that the select board reviewing the town map issue is the result of the DRB decision. And so this isn't anything that the select board, jumped into. It sort of came to us, and rightfully so. It's something we have to weigh. But right now, we're expecting a decision within 4 weeks on the motion to stay, and based on that, we will make more decisions. Does that sound like a good summary?
It's a very fluid situation, is what you're
It
saying.
is very fluid.
Yeah.
But we're learning a lot, and
Will
trying
we
to do
make
what's
this
right.
more public than you did just now?
That's it. It's public.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And the citizen is here.
Yeah, and the citizen
Okay.
is here.
Okay,
Cameras are
thank you.
Okay. That was about it, right? Yeah, maybe more right now. All right, anything more with select board forum? All right, with that, we have minutes from December 10th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with any amendments or changes.
Second.
The first paragraph, they will be talking with council. It's the other kind of council.
Oh,
COUN.
yeah.
SEL or?
SEL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
did you have anything else?
Oh, and the other side, Andrea will be sitting and listening to comments. Was and addressing that she didn't feel she had a conflict of interest at this time. I mean, that's really the thing that should, as a board member, and disclose that she didn't feel she had a conflict of interest, but she had testified during the Act 250 hearing about the canal path. So just put those words in there.
Anything else from you, Andrea? I had one item on page 2, FY20 capital budget, in that first section for town clerk. I think it's the last sentence. Missy is proposing to leave the salary. I think 2 extra words there. Did you see that?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have anything? Do you have some things?
Yeah, I found several things. The paragraph that starts with Don Francis, the second line, just is missing a letter. A copy of what she wrote, which she also posted. Posted is missing a T.
Oh, yeah. This is, you gotta tell us what it is. So it's halfway down the first page.
Right, I
That
thought it,
paragraph, Don Francis.
Okay.
yeah.
And then the end of
Okay,
that
and
sentence.
then, at the bottom of that paragraph, the last 3 lines, tax base and important services, and this is Don is talking. Don respectfully suggests, needs an S. The board take action by eminent domain and further asked to take action to remove, so second to last line, by eminent domain and further asked to take action to remove, I think it needs it entirely from the official map.
Yeah, I was basically going from what she had written, but I can make those corrections.
Okay, to remove entirely from, it's just not clear to me what that is.
All
Okay.
right. Any more?
Yeah, well, on the
Well,
second page.
But at the bottom of that page, let's take care of what the town already has and make improvements, needs an S. Yeah.
I guess on the top of the second page, Phil said the board will have some discussions in executive session with the attorney, and Andrea added that when a decision, I wasn't saying that we were going to say something to the public every time we had an executive session. I think I was referring to when a decision is made on the eminent domain, we will provide all of our reasons and thinking of what we were considering in making the decision.
We did talk about that.
Yeah, and I didn't necessarily think that.
That's written or in a public meeting.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so further down, Missy, town clerk, explained the main change this year is that she is combing, I think you meant combining several areas such as including the delinquent. According to accounting assistant, I think you need accounting assistant was increased to reflect actual.
Yeah.
Maybe it's clear, I don't know.
In the section on recreation, second
Yes.
third page, there is reference to Jen speaking. I believe she spells her name with one N.
Really?
She signed in on this sheet
just
as
one
one
N.
N.
Oh,
I mean, I'm just going off
Okay.
what she signed in on. But I could be wrong. Check with her. She'd know better than I.
And further down on that paragraph that starts with Jen, addition of a new line item, it would be clear to me, is it equipment, maintenance, and fuel? Is that the line item? Could that have quotes around it or something so that it's clear what that is the actual item?
Actual noun that we're referring to.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any others?
No, I don't.
All right, so we have a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. We have the warrants there.
I'll make a motion for you to approve warrants to include payroll, submitted from town clerk.
Second.
All right. They've been reviewed by 3 of us, I think, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 10, we're not going into executive session. So with that,
Motion to adjourn?
well,
guys
so
wanna
we have
think
a
about
motion
that?
to adjourn. Is there anything else to discuss before?
I'm just reminding people there is the,
Town-
party
on
at,
Wednesday?
yes, 5:30, Town Garage.
And did you need,
BYOB.
did you need a, RSVP for that, or?
Yeah, last Wednesday.
Okay, last Wednesday, okay.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah,
No, I mean, that's what it was.
that's what it was. Okay, I thought so, yeah. So apparently I
I
don't think I'm gonna be able to make it,
Okay,
so,
Okay.
if
Missed.
that changes, I'll let you
Okay.
know.
Potluck anyway,
Okay.
right?
what's that?
Yeah.
No, it's not a potluck. We're having, it's same Dutch Mill, I think, is bringing the,
No?
So if you
Doing
could
the food
RSVP,
again.
that would be helpful.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Can we do it here?
Sure.
Just that,
Yeah, I'll be there with my wife.
Does that mean you're bringing 10 people?
No.
Oh, you just put up 10 fingers.
Nothing, yourself.
BYOB.
BYOB,
bring your own beverage.
yes.
All right, anything else?
I did RSVP.
Oh,
Good.
great.
Yeah.
I might have, but I don't remember.
Aaron,
I told Cheryl, yes.
you're way
Yes,
ahead of
you're-
us.
Yeah,
All right.
I'll be the only one
Yeah.
who misses
I'm going.
it.
Yes, thanks.
So all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That was tight.